Chapter 2854. Many thanks. Suyu was extremely grateful. If it wasn't for Qin-yun, they would have been in big trouble. It's my duty, Qin-yun said. She looked at the living beings who were sitting cross-legged on the ground and said, however, because of your kindness, all living beings have been saved. As long as they fuse the chaotic qi into their bodies, they will have the chance to enter a 9-star civilization. But, Qin-yun glanced at the 500 sacred mountains hovering above the inner abyss. He didn't know if he could make it in time. If the life extermination thunder was successfully condensed, then the inner abyss would not be able to escape. I hope that I can make it in time, Suyu muttered. While time was still limited, Suyu returned to the Heavenly Quartz battleship and came to the side of the sinful lady. At this moment, Sinful Girl was still in a deep meditative state and had yet to wake up. However, the aura around him was getting stronger and stronger. Even though Suyu had broken through to the peak of the early stage of the Master of the Heavenly Law, he still felt terrified. Could it be that he really is comparable to the Emperor? Suyu was secretly shocked. Schwa at this moment. Yun Yazi rushed over. He couldn't leave Suyu's side for fear that he would be threatened by the Nirvana Master. When he found the evil girl, Yun Yazi was slightly stunned. Then, a complicated expression appeared on his face. I knew she wasn't dead, Yun Yazi said. What you killed back then should have only been half of her body, right? Yun Yazi understood the sinful woman better than anyone else. Suyu knew about the past between Yun Yazi and the sinful woman. As an outsider, Suyu had no right to ask for Yun Yazi's forgiveness for the grudges between them. He only said, Master, please don't make a move for now. Yun Yazi smiled faintly. The hatred from back then has long since faded away with time. Indeed. Even though he was severely injured by the sinful woman and was on the verge of death, Yun Yazi was still protecting the mystery of the sinful woman's origins. He cared for this sinful girl from the bottom of his heart. The so-called hatred had long since dispersed. Protect her well, Yun Yazi said. What she lacks is the love and concern of the human world. Suyu looked pensive. The sinful woman was indeed cold and heartless. However, the heartless her had saved his life once. I understand, Suyu said. After thinking for a while, she said, Master, can you tell me if Xia Jingyu is also a vessel for Mirrorflower Heaven? He saw Sinful Girl and Qin-yun. The two of them had the same soul and appearance as Xia Jingyu. How could he not understand? Xia Jingyu was also a vessel. He just wasn't willing to accept it. Yun Yazi sighed silently. When I first saw her, I warned you that nothing would happen between you two. So, he knew Xia Jingyu's identity from the start. However, at that time, Suyu's cultivation and realm were too low, so he couldn't understand such matters. Suyu clenched his fist. He could not accept it. Xia Jingyu was a vessel created by the Emperor. However, although she is a vessel, her soul is real. Yun Yazi looked at Suyu deeply. Everything that happened between the two of you really happened. There is nothing fake about it. Suyu nodded deeply. He had never doubted her for that. Xia Jingyu was one of the few people in the world who would not betray him. Also, if possible, find him as soon as you arrive at the 9-star civilization, Yun Yazi said. The Son of Heaven of the Sacred Mountain should be making a move very soon to take away the stone in Xia Jingyu's body. No one can say for sure if the Emperor will spare her life after taking it out. Hearing this, Suyu's heart tightened. Indeed, he should be looking for Xia Jingyu. They had been apart for 100 years. He wondered how Xia Jingyu was now. Was she safe and sound in the Divine Lady tribe? At this moment, he suddenly had a strong desire to enter the 9-star civilization. There was a woman who had been waiting for him there all along. He waited in torment. Time passed little by little. More and more people successfully integrated with the chaotic energy. Half a month later, anyone who had obtained the chaotic energy had completed the integration. In the sky, The thunder of annihilation on the sacred mountain had been brewed to the last moment. Countless thunderbolts could be seen coming from within the sacred mountain. With a casual flash, they released a power that could destroy heaven and earth, causing the formation of the inner abyss to shake incessantly. The thunder of annihilation on the sacred mountain is about to be completed. There is no time to lose. Let's get ready to set off immediately. Yun-Yazi, the demon emperor, and the heaven-splitting ancestor gathered around Su-Yu again. The inner abyss had to be abandoned. After making arrangements for the people, let's go. Su-Yu did not dare to delay. They came to the edge of the cliff of the inner abyss and stared at the incomparably dark abyss. The creatures of the inner abyss rushed over one after another. Among them was Nirvana. The master of Nirvana sat cross-legged at the bow of the ship, his face full of compassion. I, Nirvana, am willing to help you cross the abyss. He spread out his arms and 80 to 90% of the dark cave dwellings actually recovered their brightness. That was because the believers had stabilized and accumulated a certain amount of faith. Yun-Yazi and the others frowned. The participation of the Master of Nirvana was not a good thing. However, who asked him to control the boundless power of faith? He could absolutely crush them. With the destruction of the sacred mountain, it was not advisable for internal strife. They suppressed their disgust and acquiesced to his participation. The Master of Nirvana smiled and retracted his arms again. Little did they know, among the many cavern worlds, more than half of the worlds had quietly changed their faith. In a certain cavern world, the Six-Path Fairy clapped her hands and looked at the statue of Su-Yu in the last cavern world. She smiled with satisfaction. At this point, the cavern worlds under her jurisdiction had quietly changed their faith. All the statues were replaced with Su-Yus. Moreover, they had accumulated a lot of power of faith. The only problem now was how to safely escape from the Master of Nirvana with so many cavern worlds. If they were not careful and were discovered by the Master of Nirvana, all the cavern worlds would be destroyed. Just as the mission was about to be completed, a cold laugh pierced through the cavern world. Six-Path Fairy, how dare you? The voice of the Red-Foot Demon echoed loudly. At the same time, the cavern world was forcibly broken open. The Red-Foot Demon led a group of Earth Apostles and broke into this place. The Six-Path Fairy's expression changed slightly. She did not think she could hide it forever. After all, such a big move would more or less leak some information. Betraying the Master of Nirvana is a crime punishable by death. The Red-Foot Demon could not help but laugh. He had already noticed the Six-Path Fairy's little trick. He just deliberately suppressed it and did not say anything. He was waiting for the Six-Path Fairy to replace all the statues and attract the wrath of the Master of Nirvana. Now it was finally time. The Six-Path Fairy was expressionless. She whistled. Immediately, her Earth Apostles swarmed in from all directions. The two sides confronted each other in the air, erupting unprecedented smoke. It looked like a war was about to break out. However, the Red-Foot Demon laughed and slowly retreated. Do you think I am here to fight with you? Why would I risk my life to fight with you when I am about to die? I have already sent someone to inform the Great Guardian. He will be here soon. But the Six-Path Fairy's face was indifferent. If I die, do you think you can live? Huh? Chapter 2855. However, it was already too late. One of the Earth Apostles behind him suddenly had a sharp look in his eyes. Killing intent shot out from his eyes. He was already prepared and took out a sharp awl that contained 6 gray streams of air and stabbed it into the Scarlet-Foot Demon's back. His unusual action immediately caused the surrounding Earth Apostles to become furious. All of them made their moves, wanting to exterminate this traitorous Earth Apostle. Who knew? There were actually 2 traitors among the group of Earth Apostles. They took the chance to attack their own people. This caused them to fall into chaos. The traitor with the awl stabbed it further into the Scarlet-Foot Demon's back. Ah! You betrayed me! The Scarlet-Foot Demon roared in anger. He recognized that the All was a nirvana weapon personally made by Six Paths Immortal. Once it entered his body, the Six Paths Chi would seal his soul vessel. Obviously, many years ago, Six Paths Immortal had placed a trusted aide beside the Scarlet Foot Demon, waiting for a day to deal him an unexpected blow. And now it came in handy. Unfortunately, he only realized now, but it was already too late. The Scarlet Foot Demon's soul was quickly extinguished. Not long after, it was completely destroyed. Once he died, Six Paths Immortal's side let out a sigh of relief. Only Six Paths Immortal remained vigilant and inspected the Scarlet Foot Demon's body. In the end, his power had just covered the Scarlet Foot Demon's body. The body suddenly bounced up. Then, he retreated like a fish. Then, he looked at the wound on his back. The wound split open. From a 3-inch square hole, it quickly exploded in all directions. Finally, with a bang, a wave of air exploded. A smaller Scarlet Foot Demon crawled out, its body dark gold. Around it were remnants of black armor and flesh. So it was. This was the Scarlet Foot Demon's true body. Outside of his body was a fake body to confuse the enemy. At the crucial moment, it died in his place. The main body hid inside and acted according to the situation. He originally wanted to fake his death, but Six Paths Immortal was extremely vigilant and wanted to inspect the body. Left with no choice, the main body could only escape. His rebirth caused the Earth Apostles to be overjoyed. They all rushed over to protect him. Then, they quickly retreated while protecting him. The Scarlet Foot Demon sneered, "Six Paths Immortal, you're dead." On the other hand, the Sixth Daos deity looked embarrassed. The Barefoot Demon was too cunning and had hidden himself too deeply. The 3 trusted subordinates of the Red Foot Demon had never found out that the Red Foot Demon had another body. Seeing the Red Foot Demon escape under the protection of the crowd, it was impossible for the Six Path Immortal to stop him. The matter was completely exposed. He was in big trouble. Now, not to mention handing over their faith to Suyu, it was hard to say whether they could even escape. After all, someone had already gone to send a message to the Chief Protector. Just as Barefoot Demon and the others were about to escape, among the apostles protecting the Barefoot Demon, suddenly, one of them had a strange look on his face. He silently took out a thread and wrapped it around the dark golden Scarlet Foot Devil's neck. Then, he tightened his grip. The Barefoot Demon was beheaded. He died tragically on the spot. The 2 eyes on his head were still filled with bewilderment and confusion before his death. Before his consciousness completely dissipated, he turned around with difficulty to look at the person behind him. The man grinned and tore off his disguise. That was no one else. It was Gu Taishu. It's you. The Barefoot Demon couldn't understand. Why was it Gu Taishu who killed him? If Gu Taishu had told him, the Six Path Immortal might have changed his faith. Gu Taishu and Su Yu were old enemies. Why would he help Su Yu's friend, the Six Path Immortal, to kill him? His mind was filled with bewilderment and he couldn't understand Gu Taishu's behavior. When the apostles realized this, they were both enraged and attacked Gu Taishu. Gu Taishu just smiled faintly. 9 ferocious ancient beasts appeared around him and instantly enveloped them in a mist of blood. Even the corpse of the Barefoot Demon was devoured in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Gu Taishu's cultivation was increasing at an obvious speed. He licked his lips in satisfaction. Haha, do you think I, Gu Taishu, can be enslaved by anyone? The scene made the Six Path Immortal and the others gasp in shock. What kind of horrible evil technique was this? It was too evil. The Six Path Immortal stared at Gu Taishu and frowned. She felt that this person seemed familiar. She seemed to have seen him before, but she couldn't remember where. However, he was too evil and definitely not a good person. She secretly contacted her people and slowly retreated, leaving the Nirvana worship. Don't worry. Gu Taishu smiled faintly. I was sent by the Barefoot Demon to inform the Great Guardian. So, he didn't go to inform them. Currently, no one knew what happened here. Why are you helping us? The Sixth Path Immortal asked. Gu Taishu sneered. Why? Just know that if you listen to me, you can live. The Sixth Path Immortal was skeptical. What do you want us to do? Gu Taishu said faintly. It's simple. Bring all of these beliefs to Suyu, and I will protect you. The Sixth Path Immortal was suspicious. Would he really be so kind as to help them? As if he had seen through their thoughts, Gu Taishu said, You have no choice but to trust me. The Sixth Path Immortal didn't deny it. That was true. The death of the barefoot demon couldn't be hidden for long. It wouldn't be long before all the cavern worlds were taken away. What awaited them would be the thunderous fury of the Nirvana Lord. I am proficient in a secret technique that can create fake cavern worlds to temporarily replace you. Meanwhile, you will try your best to find Suyu. As he spoke, Gu Taishu released one of the ancient beasts. This ancient beast had the ability to create illusions, making it difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. The Sixth Path Immortal believed most of them. Immediately, he organized the cavern worlds under his jurisdiction and put them all into his pocket. Then, he left quietly. Gu Taishu fabricated a large number of fake cavern worlds to deceive everyone. However, when everything was ready, Gu Taishu's lips curled into a sinister smile. Suyu, you will die this time. The Sixth Path Immortal. She brought a group of Earth Apostles to seek refuge with Suyu. However, the more she thought about it, the more she felt something was wrong. Then, she quietly stopped somewhere on the ground. My lord, are you doubting that person's motives? One of her subordinates was also uneasy. The Sixth Path Immortal nodded deeply. She had placed her subordinates by the side of the barefoot demon for many years, so her intelligence was not low. There must be a trap. The Sixth Path Immortal pondered. I should inform Suyu about this and ask him to make a decision. In her heart, there was no conspiracy that Suyu couldn't predict. As she spoke, she carefully took out half of her precious heart-shaped communication device. Her eyes were filled with anxiety, excitement, and uneasiness. After hesitating for a while, she bit her red lips and sent a message into it. Suyu, who was urging the people to come to the cliff. He was shocked. Chapter 2856. Suyu was shocked. If not for the message, he would have forgotten about it. She is still alive. Suyu could not help but look at the warship of the Nirvana Master in the distance. Filled with excitement, Suyu immediately opened the communication device and read the message. After reading it, there was no joy on his face. Instead, there was a solemn expression. He learned that the Six Paths Fairy had brought more than half of the Nirvana Master's believers to him. Suyu could not be happy, because it was indicated that it was a person surrounded by blood fog and skilled in using beast souls. Suyu narrowed his eyes. Surrounded by blood fog, skilled in beast souls, and in Nirvana Master. Who was this person? The answer was obvious. Gu Taishu. Why would he help the Six Paths Fairy out of kindness and help Suyu obtain so many believers? Would Gu Taishu be so stupid as his life and death rival? Suyu replied immediately and asked the Six Paths Fairy to explain everything clearly. On the other side, the Six Paths Fairy waited anxiously. To be honest, she was not sure if Suyu still had the half-heart-shaped communication device that she had given him. After all, such a long time had passed. But she felt an inexplicable sweetness in her heart. The communication device in her palm vibrated. Not only did Suyu reply, but he did so immediately. After reading Suyu's message, she quickly sorted out the ins and outs of the matter. When Suyu saw it, he immediately understood Gu Taishu's intentions. Gu Taishu wants to provoke a war between me and the Nirvana Master, to kill me. Suyu immediately saw the stakes. Everyone knew that the Nirvana Master wanted to kill Suyu. But he might not do it before the 9-star civilization. After all, his greatest enemy was the Holy Mountain, and Suyu was surrounded by experts. But taking away more than half of his believers was a different story. Believers were the lifeline of the Nirvana Master. How could he allow others to take them away? It would be strange if he did not fly into a rage on the spot. If everything goes according to plan, he will expose you to the Nirvana Master before you bring the believers to me, Suyu said in a low voice. Moreover, he must have done something in some cavern world to prevent you from bringing the believers to me successfully. Wasn't Gu Taishu worried that the believers would fall into Suyu's hands? Of course he was. Therefore, he definitely had a backup plan. Suyu thought about it again and commanded, "You immediately order people to check all the major cavern worlds. I think there is at least one or more positioning magical treasure. It's highly likely that Gu Taishu will be able to locate you based on these locator treasures and report you to the Lord of Nirvana. That way, he'll be able to swindle the credit and kill two birds with one stone." Not only had he incited the Nirvana Master's desire to kill Suyu, but he had also made a great contribution and received a reward from the Nirvana Master. Needless to say, it was really killing two birds with one stone. Hearing this, the Immortal of the Six Paths did as he was told. He ordered the ambassadors and disciples to start inspecting the cavern worlds they were in charge of. Not to mention, he actually found two locator magic treasures. One of them was even more deeply hidden. If it weren't for the fact that they had absolute control over the cavern world and could quickly find out the fluctuations of the magic treasures, he was afraid that Gu Taishu would really succeed. Looking at the two locator treasures, the sixth Daos Immortal couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. If Gu Taishu really brought the Lord of Nirvana over based on the signals of these locating treasures, these traitors were really going to die without a burial ground. Fortunately, I asked Suyu. The sixth Daos Immortal secretly rejoiced at his vigilance and didn't rashly trust Gu Taishu. Otherwise, he would have been betrayed by him and counted the money for him. "My lord, Suyu's divine physique is too amazing," a disciple said in shock. Just by combing through the matter once, the other party had already speculated most of the conspiracy. He understood it even more clearly than those who had experienced it themselves. The sixth Daos Immortal pursed her lips and smiled. "Haven't you heard that Suyu's divine physique is best at scheming? In her memory, there was never a person whose scheming ability could be compared to Suyu's. We shouldn't stay here for long. Let's go." The sixth Daos Immortal didn't destroy the positioning magical treasure. Instead, he caught two demonic beasts, stuffed the positioning magical treasure into their stomachs, and drove them in another direction. "For safety's sake, we will approach Suyu through a winding route," the sixth Daos Immortal said. At that time, Gu Taishu was sitting cross-legged in the cavern world. After a while, he opened his eyes slightly and looked at a crystal plate in his palm. There were two beams of red light flashing on it. The corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. "It's almost time. Suyu, I wonder how you would feel if you watched the woman who loved you die in front of you." As he spoke, he got up and left the Nirvana worship. Before he left, the chief guardian noticed him. He frowned and said, "You are one of my disciples, right? Where are you going?" Disciples could not leave the Nirvana worship without the permission of the guardian. Gu Taishu said calmly, "I have something urgent to report to the Nirvana Master." The chief guardian narrowed his eyes and said softly, "You are very bold." Gu Taishu was his disciple, so he should report everything to his direct superior first. Reporting to someone at a higher level meant that he didn't take him seriously. Gu Taishu said calmly, "Chief Guardian, instead of making things difficult for me, I think it's better for you to take a look at the cavern world under your jurisdiction." What happened to the cavern world? The chief guardian was surprised. However, those cavern worlds were under the control of his master and disciples. So what? This Gu Taishu, on the other hand, was abnormal and annoying. "Come here," the chief guardian ordered. Gu Taishu said calmly, "I'm sorry, I have decided to quit working for you. Now you have no right to interfere. Hearing that, the chief guardian laughed angrily. His subordinates could quit and come in whenever they wanted? It's not up to you. The chief guardian sneered and stood up. He turned into a beam of light and attacked the chief guardian. Gu Taishu was prepared and released the 9 ferocious beasts. His cultivation was quite high, and after eating the red-foot demon and the earth apostles, his cultivation had skyrocketed. Although he was not as good as the chief guardian, he was not far behind. After exchanging blows, Gu Taishu was only pushed back. He was not injured. He took the opportunity to retreat and flew toward the Nirvana Master. One chased and the other chased. Soon it attracted the attention of the Nirvana Master. What a scandal! The Nirvana Master frowned and shouted. Only then did the two stop. The chief guardian said, reporting to the Nirvana Master, this person disobeyed orders and left the Nirvana warship without permission. I am trying to catch him. The Nirvana Master looked at Gu Taishu with eyes full of unfamiliarity and said indifferently, then kill him. The Nirvana Master never forgave those who disobeyed him. Gu Taishu said calmly, reporting to the Nirvana Master, I have an important matter to inform you urgently, so I had no choice but to do so. The Nirvana Master said indifferently, no matter what urgent matter it is not a reason for you to disobey the orders of your superior. The Nirvana Master created had a strict hierarchy. Chapter 2857. More than half of the Lord of Nirvana's cavern world has been taken away by someone. Can't you do that? Gu Taishu said calmly. What? The Lord of Nirvana furrowed his brows. He immediately spread his arms and looked at the monk robes on his side. On the left, there were still countless cavern worlds dotted like galaxies. However, on the right side it was pitch black, and there was not a single cavern world left. Bang! Due to his shock, an extremely powerful airflow erupted from the Lord of Nirvana's body, sending the Chief Guardian and Gu Taishu flying on the spot. Within the shockwave, the two of them were injured to varying degrees. Blood trickled down the corners of Gu Taishu's mouth. He barely steadied himself and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Not only was he not angry, but he also lowered his head and sneered. Good. The angrier the Nirvana Master was, the nearer Suyu was to death. Who took it? The Lord of Nirvana's powerful aura pressed down on Gu Taishu. All of a sudden, Gu Taishu's body went limp, and he knelt on the ground. His face was filled with fear and trepidation as he said, Lord of Nirvana, it was done by the deity of the 6 realms, who is under the command of the Great Protector. He looked carefully at the Great Protector and said, that is why I have to bypass the Great Protector and report to you alone. In other words, he was worried that the Great Protector would be involved and kill him to silence him. Hearing this, the Lord of Nirvana's gaze was like lightning, fiercely shooting towards the Great Protector. As a result, a huge bloody hole was blasted in the Chief Protector's chest with a loud bang. Just a little more and his life would be in danger. It was obvious that the Nirvana Lord had fallen into an irrational rage. Otherwise, he wouldn't have attacked a subordinate who had been loyal to him for many years. Chief Protector endured the pain and said, I didn't know. The Lord of Nirvana retracted his gaze. His gaze just now contained a trace of probing, and he had already searched through the other party's soul. He confirmed that the Chief Protector was not involved. I'll spare your life. I'll interrogate you later, the Nirvana Lord said. Although the Chief Protector did not participate in it, there was still the crime of not being strict with his subordinates. His body trembled and he lowered his head. However, he glanced at Gu Taishu out of the corner of his eye. His eyes were filled with hatred. Gu Taishu was definitely doing it on purpose. Him reporting to the Lord of Nirvana alone was equivalent to putting him, the Great Protector, on the rack to roast. Now he was accused of not being strict with his subordinate. Coincidentally, Gu Taishu also looked at him, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile. He did it on purpose. Not only did he want the barefooted demon dead, he also wanted the chief protector dead. At the very least, he would take away his position. Therefore, Gu Taishu took a step forward and started to make a contribution. Lord of Nirvana, I can think of a way to recover all the lost cavern worlds. The Lord of Nirvana, who was looking around for the cavern world, was shocked. He had already searched all the cavern worlds just now, and he had lost contact with them. If the other party could hide in the sea of people, it would be very difficult to find him. Moreover, they were about to enter the abyss. How would he have the time to find it? Hearing Gu Taishu's words, how could he not be moved? He faced Gu Taishu with an expectant look and promised on the spot, "If you can find the cavern world, I can satisfy whatever you want." He glanced at the chief protector and said, "Including the position of protector." Gu Taishu was overjoyed. Everything was going according to his plan. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. "Thank you, Suyu. Thank you, your woman, for helping me." He immediately took out the crystal plate and pointed at the 2 red dots on it. He said, "I sensed that the 6 path deities were up to no good, so I placed the coordinates in the 2 cavern worlds. You can still make it if you rush over now." Hearing that, the Lord of Nirvana couldn't help but applaud. "What's your name?" "Gu Taishu, Lord of Nirvana." The Lord of Nirvana said, "Good. Gu Taishu, you have done very well. With such a temperament, you will definitely achieve great things in the future. Let's go. Find the cavern world." The Lord of Nirvana squinted his eyes. "I also want to kill those traitors with my own hands." His eyes were full of killing intent. It came like a storm. The group of people immediately chased after them. With the 2 positioning treasures, it wasn't difficult to find them. The chief protector followed at the back. His heart was extremely heavy. He could already see his future situation. Even if the punishment was not too severe, he would still retain his position as the chief protector. However, it would be difficult to gain the trust of the Lord of Nirvana in the future. If it was him, his subordinates would have lost more than half of his cavern world without realizing it. How could he put such an incompetent person in an important position? In a fit of anger, he might even kill him. And all of this was because of this insidious Gu Taishu. In his heart, he had already crushed Gu Taishu's bones into ashes countless times. Unfortunately, if nothing went wrong, Gu Taishu would be the one in power in the future. He would gradually lose his advantage and be suppressed by Gu Taishu. Not only could he not vent his anger, but he also had to swallow it himself. Thinking of this, his heart became heavier. On the contrary, Gu Taishu was delighted. It was as if he had already seen the scene of himself being above everyone else. Given time, he might even be able to devour the Lord of Nirvana. He would replace the Lord of Nirvana and become a powerful existence above many peerless experts. By then, what would Suyu be? Beep. Right at this moment, 2 beeps came from the crystal plate. Gu Taishu was a little excited. He said, "Almost found one." He looked at the crystal plate, excited and a little surprised. The 2 positioning treasures on it showed that they had separated. This shouldn't be the case. All the cavern worlds should have been kept together by the 6 Paths Fairy. How could they be separated? Did the 6 Paths Fairy divide the cavern world into 2 parts for Suyu to be safe? So the 2 positioning treasures just happened to be separated? This was probably the reason. He was not sure. Looking at the nearest positioning treasure, he guided the Lord of Nirvana and the others to hurry over. In the end, they didn't catch up with the 6 Paths Fairy and the others. Instead, it was a demonic beast that was running happily. The beast sensed that the experts were chasing it. It blinked its innocent eyes and ran away. But it was still forced into a corner. The Lord of Nirvana killed it mercilessly and cut open its stomach. A locator magic treasure that was emitting waves was dug out. The Lord of Nirvana's face darkened. "This is the positioning treasure you mentioned?" Gu Taishu looked a little uneasy. He said hurriedly, Maybe they found one of the positioning treasures, so they tied it to the demonic beast to lure us away. There is another one. He looked at the trajectory of the other one, which happened to be heading straight for Suyu. He felt relieved. It seemed that this speculation was correct. Fortunately, I placed 2 positioning treasures at the same time. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable, Gu Taishu said to himself. Chapter 2858. Whether or not they could find the lost cavern world depended on the last locator. After half a cup of tea's time, Gu Taishu stared at the red dot on the crystal plate, which was getting closer and closer. His face lit up with joy. We'll catch up soon. The red dot kept moving in the direction of Suyu. Who would believe that it wasn't the Six Paths Fairy? Nirvana Master's killing intent surged. You betrayed me for a man? The Six Paths Fairy's fate would be terrible. It was even more terrible than death. It's getting closer. They chased into a reed bush that was as tall as 2 people. Looking at the red dot that was not far from him, Gu Taishu was eager to make a contribution, so he flew over first. He flew over the empty spot in the air. Then, he used his precious technique to burn everything nearby, revealing the Six Paths Fairy who was hiding. Gu Taishu looked down and the smile on his face froze. What appeared in front of him was not the immortal of the 6 paths, but a burnt bear demon. Nirvana Master rushed over, and the smile on his face faded. It was replaced by a gloomy look. He pinched the air and crushed the body of the demon bear. He took out a locator that was constantly emitting signals from the body. Nirvana Master's face was gloomy as he said in a low voice, "Is this the other locator you mentioned?" At this moment, even Gu Taishu was at a loss. Both locators had been found? Did the 6 Paths Fairy see through my plan and discover both locators in advance? Did she use it to lure us away? It shouldn't be. How could that woman know what I wanted to do? Wait. Gu Taishu's eyes narrowed immediately. Could it be Suyu? If that woman had a way to contact Suyu, thinking of this, Gu Taishu's heart trembled and hatred grew. It should be Suyu. It couldn't be wrong. Only Suyu could see through his plan so easily and set up a series of countermeasures. All his plans had been destroyed. At this moment, the chief guardian said in a strange tone, "Nirvana Master, I'm very curious. Since Gu Taishu discovered the 6 Paths Fairy's plan, why didn't he report it to you until she succeeded? Moreover, why didn't the 2 locators he set up work at all? Instead, they led us in circles and wasted the best opportunity to intercept the 6 Paths Fairy?" In other words, he suspected that Gu Taishu was behind all this. Nirvana Lord narrowed his eyes. Indeed, from the very beginning, it was all Gu Taishu's one-sided story. Gu Taishu immediately tried to explain himself. He then said sincerely, "Master of Nirvana, please believe me. I really did set up the tracking device, but the other party was guided by Suyu, so he discovered it and intentionally lured us away." The great guardian chuckled. "Can Suyu predict the future and see the past? If you didn't tell him, how would he know that there are locators in the cavern world? Moreover, there are 2 of them." Gu Taishu was at a loss for words. It was true that Suyu couldn't see the future or the past, but he was really good at calculating. With just a few clues, he could analyze the ins and outs of a matter. It could be said to be terrifying. Those who had not competed with Suyu in terms of intelligence would not know how frightening he was. Gu Taishu said, "Lord of Nirvana, if I were to betray you, why would I do this? Wouldn't it be easier for the 6th Taoist immortal to escape if he doesn't report it?" The Lord of Nirvana pondered. That's true. If Gu Taishu hadn't reported it, the 6th Taoist immortal would have successfully delivered the entire cavern world to Suyu. If he were a traitor, there would be no need for him to do this. Not only would he increase the risk of this trip, but he would also put himself in danger. The great guardian was about to continue questioning him. The Lord of Nirvana waved his hand. "The enemy is too cunning. Gu Taishu's plan has failed. He looked at Gu Taishu and said indifferently, I said that you will only be rewarded if you find the cavern world. Since you didn't find it, go back to your original position and work. Hearing that, the great guardian stopped arguing. Instead, he retreated calmly. When he looked at Gu Taishu out of the corner of his eye, he smiled coldly. Go back to his original position? That was to return to his jurisdiction. Gu Taishu still wanted to live a good life? Ha! How could the great guardian be satisfied if he didn't crush Gu Taishu into ashes? Gu Taishu's heart sank. He thought that this time, he was confident of winning, so he went all out. But the result, not only did he not receive the reward of the Lord of Nirvana to replace the great guardian. Instead, he had offended the Lord of Nirvana. If he really went back to his original position, his fate would be worse than death. Nirvana could not wait any longer. There was no place for him to stay here. Yes, I will take my leave. Gu Taishu took the initiative to leave the Lord of Nirvana as soon as possible. The Great Guardian was about to follow. The Lord of Nirvana said, Great Guardian, dispatch the other guardians to spread out the net. We must find the 6 realms fairy. Yes. The Great Guardian was helpless. He could only stare at Gu Taishu's back and carry out the Lord of Nirvana's order. At this moment, a bird came quickly. After circling in the sky for a few times, it asked, Have you seen Gu Taishu? Why would the Lord of Nirvana care about a little demon beast? The Great Guardian's eyes flashed and he asked, What do you want from him? The bird said, I am here to send a letter of gratitude to Gu Taishu. A letter of gratitude? Even the Lord of Nirvana squinted his eyes. Who sent it? The bird shook its head. I don't know. I heard others call her the 6 realms fairy. What? A letter of gratitude from the 6 realms fairy to Gu Taishu? The Lord of Nirvana grabbed the bird in the air and immediately caught it. He took a letter from the man's chest. He opened it and read it. It said, Thank you, Brother Gu, for protecting us at the risk of your life. We have successfully arrived at our destination. Please find a chance to leave the Lord of Nirvana and join us as soon as possible. Read it. The Lord of Nirvana crushed the letter into pieces in an instant. The Great Guardian said angrily, I told you. Gu Taishu deliberately led us in circles and wasted the best opportunity for us to intercept him. The Lord of Nirvana's face was gloomy and he asked the bird, Where did the 6 realms fairy give you the letter? The bird shook its head. I don't remember. Humph. The Lord of Nirvana immediately searched the bird's soul. However, he found that the memory of receiving the letter had been deleted. Damn it. The Lord of Nirvana could not tolerate that he was played by a small character like Gu Taishu. If the letter had not fallen into his hands, he would have been kept in the dark. Convey my order. The Lord of Nirvana will hunt down Gu Taishu until he is dead. The Lord of Nirvana roared angrily. The Great Guardian bowed and said yes. He immediately led people to search for Gu Taishu. However, he had already escaped when he saw that the situation was not good. In a corner, Gu Taishu, who was in disguise, looked at the Nirvanas who had come to capture him with great fanfare. Gu Taishu's face was extremely gloomy. He went for wool and came home shorn. Now, the Lord of Nirvana could not be allowed to stay. At that time, in the Heavenly Court's battleship, Suyu looked at the 6 realms fairy with a smile. His eyes were filled with endless emotions. Chapter 2859. That thank you letter was enough to make Gu Taishu die without a burial place. Suyu smiled faintly. Based on my understanding of Gu Taishu, he may not be dead. He probably ran away when he saw that the situation was not good. The 6-path deity covered his nose and laughed. I really don't understand what's wrong with him. Why did he insist on being your enemy? To be honest, she felt sorry for Gu Taishu. He failed to plot against Suyu, but was tricked by Suyu and became a stray dog. Suyu smiled lightly and stared at the 6-path deity. He said sincerely, I'm very happy to see you again. That was what he said from the bottom of his heart. Old acquaintances. One by one, they left him. After a few decades, how could he not be happy to see one again? The six-path deity was none other than Xing Yuanxin. He didn't expect that they would meet again in this way. Xing Yuanxin's calm face was also filled with undisguised joy. She nodded and said, "Me too. I'm so happy that you are still alive." Xing Yuanxin had seen so many deaths that she was numb to the death of her companions. Unexpectedly, she could see Su Yu again in her lifetime. As she spoke, Xing Yuanxin took out a glass ball. It was like a starry sky, decorated with countless cavern worlds. "This is a gift for you." Xing Yuanxin handed it over. Su Yu took it. The moment he touched it, he felt the horrible power of faith gushing out from the crystal ball. The power of faith was 10,000 times stronger than that of the people on the Heaven Court's battleship. If the absorption was successful, he didn't know how powerful his holy body would be. However, it seemed that he couldn't absorb the power of faith. Xing Yuanxin said, "I just changed all the statues inside to you. They believe in the statues, not the real you, so you can't absorb the power of faith. In the future, you need to do something that will convince the believers and get their approval. Only then can you absorb the power of faith gathered in the statues." So that was it. Su Yu held the crystal ball and suddenly felt it was heavy. When Xing Yuanxin learned that Su Yu was here, she risked her life to prepare such a valuable gift for him. He didn't prepare anything for Xing Yuanxin. "What can I do for you?" Su Yu asked. Xing Yuanxin smiled indifferently. Her smile was exceptionally beautiful. "In my life, there are some people who are worth me risking my life for without asking for anything in return." Su Yu was shocked. Many years ago, he had said something similar to this. That was for Xia Jingyu. It was as if a string in his heart had been pulled, causing his heart to tremble endlessly. Looking at Xing Yuanxin, who was so close to him, he didn't know how to respond to her feelings. Xing Yuanxin smiled faintly. "Next, you might have to face the threat of the Lord of Nirvana, and there is a limit to how much I can help you." She was very clear about the Lord of Nirvana's strength. Her strength was as low as a speck of dust, it was useless. "Don't worry, I'll think of a way." After thinking for a moment, Su Yu took out a small lotus throne of evil crossing and said, "Do you want to see your mother, the Xing deity?" Hearing this, Xing Yuanxin stood up excitedly, her eyes glistening with joy. Is she still alive?" More than 100 years later. She couldn't be sure if her mother, who was only a deity, had passed away. "She's safe and sound, just a lot older," Su Yu murmured. The Xing deity wasn't the only old one. There was also his father-in-law, the Duke of Xianyu. 200 years had passed, and he was immortal. Even with the nourishment of many elixirs, he couldn't avoid aging. Now, his hair was white and he was getting old. Many of his old friends had also passed away, and their hair had turned white. Su Yu opened the lotus throne of evil crossing and let Xing Yuanxin in. An inexplicable sadness surged in his heart. There was no eternity in this world. Everyone would pass away. Qin Xianer was like this, Xie Xiaoya was like this, and all the beauty in life was gone. Su Yu clenched his fist. He didn't feel depressed because of this. Instead, he became more determined in the martial path. Only by transcending all the shackles of the world could he obtain eternity. Looking at the many people who were preparing to enter the abyss, one after another, Su Yu waved his hands, one on each side. A woman appeared in each. They were all in a deep sleep. One of them was Biyun Hongxian. She was harmed by her father, and her bloodline was extracted. She was still in a coma. In the past, he lacked the power of the bloodline and couldn't save her. Now that he controlled the bloodline of the 8 great ancient gods, it wouldn't be difficult to save her again. With a flick of his fingers, a trace of the bloodline of the time and space ancient gods was extracted and inserted into Biyun Hongxian's body. She let out a soft snort, and then slowly opened her eyes. She opened her eyes and looked around at the unfamiliar surroundings. Her memory was still at the moment when her father and Xiaohao conspired to steal her bloodline. Then, she helped Su Yu steal the jade pendant from Xiaohao. "I'm sorry to have implicated you," Su Yu said. Recognizing Su Yu, Biyun Hongxian was relieved and hurriedly said, "Mr. Su, you have to run. Xiaohao has obtained the bloodline of time and space, and has become the master of the two realms." Su Yu smiled gently. "It's all over." He briefly explained the current situation. After listening, Biyun Hongxian was stunned for a long time, and then smiled bitterly. "It's said that watching a game of chess is a dream for 100 years. I only slept once, but I'm already 1,000 years old." Biyun Hongxian couldn't adapt to the change in the situation. "Go to the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Seat to rest. The next time you come out, it might be a brand new era." Su Yu opened the Nightmare Crossing Lotus Seat. Biyun Hongxian had no home to return to, so she entered without hesitation. Moreover, she took the initiative to join the Cauldron. Finally, Su Yu looked at Luo Xue. Gazing at the pure and holy face, the familiar face, he felt the most complicated emotions. The Red Dust Path Master had controlled her, indirectly causing Xie Xiaoye's death. It had left him with irreparable damage. For a long time, he couldn't face Luo Xue. Now that he was about to leave the void, he summoned up the courage to deal with the things left behind. After a long silence, he pointed his finger between Luo Xue's eyebrows. Her soul, which had been suppressed by the Red Dust Path Master, finally reoccupied her body and slowly regained consciousness. Looking at the unfamiliar environment, Luo Xue was at a loss. When she saw Su Yu, she was pleasantly surprised. Su Yu. Then she remembered that before she fell into a coma, the Red Dust Path Master had suppressed her soul and used Su Kai-er to threaten Su Yu's life. "How is Su Kai-er?" Luo Xue asked hurriedly. Her heart clenched tightly and she blamed herself. If anything happened to Su Kai-er, she wouldn't be able to forgive herself. "She's fine, nothing happened to her," Su Yu said. Looking at Luo Xue's expression, Su Yu felt relieved. In the end, Luo Xue was just being used. What had she done wrong? On the contrary, she had been protecting Qin Xian'er and her daughter. Luo Xue heaved a sigh of relief and patted her chest. That's good, that's good." After a pause, she said, "By the way, where's Xian'er? Why don't I see her?" Su Yu felt a sharp pain in his heart. Chapter 2860. Luo Xue said in surprise, "Say something? Where is Xian'er? I want to apologize to her in person." She was nervous, not knowing if Qin Xian'er would forgive her. Qin Xian'er trusted her so much. But in the end, she had taken her daughter hostage. And she had taken the risk to kill the man she valued the most in her life. After a long while, Su Yu said hoarsely, "She's dead." "Dead?" Luo Xue was unmoved and even laughed. "Then hurry up and resurrect her. Don't think I don't know that you are proficient in the field of life." She thought that Su Yu was joking with her. But he wasn't. Su Yu said with a desolate look, "Xian'er has returned to the void and will never come back." Hearing this, Luo Xue's soft body gradually stiffened. She had been in an 8-star civilization for so long, how could she not know what returning to the void was? It was a real death. Everything turned into energy of nothingness. She would never come back. Really? Luo Xue's eyes were dull and her breathing stagnated. She couldn't accept this sudden news. Su Yu nodded. Luo Xue's heart twitched uncontrollably. She asked, "Is it because of me?" Su Yu patted her shoulder gently and said, "It has nothing to do with you. It was the ancient god Jiolong who killed her." No matter what, Luo Xue was innocent. She shouldn't have been responsible for Xie Xiaoye's death. Luo Xue's mood did not ease. She couldn't help but cover her face and burst into tears. "But I didn't have time to say sorry." The guilt in her heart was indescribable. At this moment, she seemed to have returned to the time when her body was occupied by the Red Dust Path Master and Su Kai-er was held hostage. She wanted to apologize, but no one listened. Su Yu closed his eyes, his heart filled with sorrow. He also owed Qin Xian'er a hug. She had been waiting for his return in the heavenly court. But what awaited her was the ancient god Jiulong and eternal death. The two of them mourned for a long time, unable to extricate themselves. That was until a loud horn sounded. Su Yu recovered from his guilt. He stood up and said, "The dead are gone. What we have to do is face the future." Luo Xue clenched her fists tightly, letting her tears fall freely on them. "May I ask, how can the ancient god Jiulong be killed?" Her future was to kill ancient god Nine Dragon and avenge Qin Xian'er. "When you have reached the pinnacle of the world," Su Yu said as he flicked his sleeves and left. They arrived at the edge of the abyss. All living beings were ready. He just had to wait for the Tao Abyss's invitation to open a path to the Taichu Temple for all living beings in the abyss. Su Yu's arrival. It attracted countless cheers. Their spirits were lifted as if they could see themselves stepping into a 9-star civilization. "I hope that everyone can proceed in an orderly manner and not panic, so as to not cause any unnecessary chaos," Su Yu said. He took out the Tao Abyss invitation from the Lord of Nirvana. With a light fling of his hand, he tossed the invitation letter into the abyss. Only the possessor of the invitation letter could successfully open the path to the abyss. They also decided whether they would allow the rest of the people to move forward. Su Yu could walk over there by himself and cut off the other people's path. Of course, he wouldn't do that. Just as he swore to the world, he would protect them until the last moment of their lives. "Look up at the sky!" Someone suddenly shouted. They subconsciously looked up. Golden light filled the air above his head. That was the remaining 500 holy mountains. In the past half a month, they had tried their best to brew the thunder of annihilation. Now it seemed that their thunder of annihilation was not fully brewed. It would take some time. However, Su Yu sacrificed the blood of his heart and gave the people the aura of chaos at an incredible speed. The orderly holy mountains lost their composure. That was why they chose to take action before the thunder of annihilation was completed. Bang! The 500 holy mountains slowly separated, revealing cracks between each other. From the cracks there was a thunderbolt that could destroy heaven and earth. In the thunderbolt, every trace of lightning was condensed from countless heavenly paths. It was destructive to all living beings. Rumble! A trace of lightning fell from it uncontrollably and smashed into the defensive formation of the inner abyss. As a result, a scene that made people feel like their souls were about to leave their bodies appeared. The formation of the inner abyss that the 500 holy mountains could not break even when they joined forces. The lightning bolt had actually easily melted a huge hole through it, and this was only a trace. The thunderbolt brewing in the holy mountains at this moment was not one trace, nor 500 traces, but 500. If all of it poured down, it would be enough to destroy the inner abyss in an instant. Except for Su Yu and a group of peerless powerful beings, no one could survive. They would all die a violent death. "Get ready to enter the abyss immediately," Su Yu growled. Many peerless powerful beings felt their hearts in their throat. The endless people were even more terrified. What was fortunate was that the holy mountains had prepared too hastily. It would take half an hour for the thunder of annihilation to be released, and half an hour was enough for all the people to be transferred to the path of the abyss. "Nirvana Lord, what are you doing?" At this moment, some peerless powerful beings suddenly noticed the unusual behavior of the Nirvana Lord. They saw him rushing over from afar. But he did not have the patience to wait for the path of the abyss to open. Instead, he went straight to the falling invitation letter of the Tao Abyss. Yun Yazi and the others did not say a word and immediately chased after him, roaring in unison, "Stop!" What did the Nirvana Lord want to do at this moment of doomsday? But they were still a step too late. The Nirvana Lord grabbed the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss back into his hand. Then he quickly moved away from the abyss and the people. He stared at the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss, ignoring the angry will of the peerless powerful beings and the people. He said to himself, "Everything must be returned to its original owner. It is mine, so it should naturally return to my hands." The peerless powerful beings were furious. "You are despicable and shameless." While their attention was distracted by the holy mountain, he suddenly snatched the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss. The demon emperor said majestically, "Nirvana Lord, the people are in trouble. Quickly throw the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss down and give the people a way to live." The Nirvana Lord nodded. Of course. He threw the invitation letter of the Tao Abyss down again. The invitation letter of the Tao Abyss fell into the abyss and immediately caused the abyss water to splash. A road paved with ancient bluestone slabs hidden under the abyss slowly floated up from the abyss. Everyone was excited. Looking along the road, it really led straight to the Taichu Temple. It arrived at the most mysterious place. The demon emperor secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The Nirvana Lord was quite sensible and did not offend the people. As they thought so, the Nirvana Lord led his Nirvana warship and flew down the path of the abyss. The other peerless powerful beings and the people did not dare to wait any longer and followed. But what no one expected was Chapter 2861. The path of the abyss behind him sank back into the water. The person who controlled the Tao Abyss's invitation could control the path of the abyss. He could use his will to decide whether others could step on it. Seeing this, the peerless figures and living beings did not have a place to land, so they hurriedly flew up again. They were all shocked. "Lord of Nirvana, what are you doing?" The demon emperor's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the Lord of Nirvana was up to no good. He must have a reason for snatching the invitation. The Lord of Nirvana stood on the path of the abyss and looked up at the many powerful figures and living beings who had nowhere to go. He said without shame, "Amitabha, Buddha will help those who are fated, but you are not fated with Buddha. I cannot help you all." Rumble. The sacred mountain seemed to have discovered the internal strife in the abyss and became excited. Countless life-extinguishing lightning rumbled and sped up. The living beings in the abyss were shocked and furious. The sky-cracking patriarch roared, "What are you trying to do?" The Lord of Nirvana was trying to kill them all. But facing the anger of the living beings, he said calmly, "I said that I will only help those who are fated. And those who are fated are my believers." Believers? Everyone immediately understood the Lord of Nirvana's intentions. He was threatening everyone to become believers of the Lord of Nirvana. But was it that easy to become a believer of the Lord of Nirvana? Didn't they see that all of his believers were trapped in the cavern world and used by him? Plus, what right did they have to believe in the Lord of Nirvana? They hated his despicable methods, so how could they respect him from the bottom of their hearts? This was simply too much. Some of the weak-willed living beings immediately surrendered and said, "Lord of Nirvana, I am willing to become your believer. Let me in." The Lord of Nirvana was indifferent. He said, "You are covered in the evil of the world and your hearts are impure. You are not worthy of becoming my believers." "Then what do you want?" they asked anxiously. The Lord of Nirvana said calmly, "It's simple. Wipe away your own memories and only keep your consciousness." He stood on the path of the abyss and controlled the life and death of the living beings. What? Wipe away their own memories? Wouldn't that make them walking corpses with no memories? They were even worse than those imprisoned believers. At the very least, those believers still had their own consciousness. But whatever they had, they were just puppets. Whatever the Lord of Nirvana told them, that was what they were. What was the difference between this and death? "Lord of Nirvana, don't go too far." Many living beings roared in anger. He hated the Lord of Nirvana's despicable actions to the bone. Before this, there were still people who were bewitched by his appearance and had a good impression and trust of him. But now, he hated them to the bone. Its true nature was also completely exposed. The Lord of Nirvana was calm as usual. "If you are not willing to turn over a new leaf, I will not stop you. Unfortunately, I cannot help you." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly turned around and strode towards the Hall of Absolute Beginning. With every step he took, the path of the abyss behind him would sink. When they saw the Nirvana Lord leave by himself, there was no one who wasn't enraged, no one who wasn't filled with hatred. "Lord of Nirvana, if there's a next life, I'll make sure you won't be able to eat or sleep in peace, even if I become a ghost." On the cliff, the hatred of the common people soared to the heavens. The hatred was so strong that it pierced through the ages. Perhaps, apart from the Emperor of the Holy Mountain, no one could be hated to such an extent. The Lord of Nirvana's expression was indifferent, not caring about their lives at all. With a face full of compassion, he said, "Sai, the Buddha is merciful, but the fools of the world do not listen to advice and refuse to repent." He was laughing coldly in his heart. If there was anyone to blame, blame it on Su Yu. He had stolen more than half of his followers, so he could only use this method to enslave all the living beings of the inner abyss into followers. The common people were filled with grief and indignation. They wished they could skin him alive and eat his flesh. But even so, the hatred in their hearts could not be alleviated. Rumble, at this moment, the Holy Mountain had finally activated the thunder of destruction. 500 bolts of lightning descended from the sky like flames, enveloping the entire inner abyss. Countless living beings were filled with despair. Their faces were filled with hatred that they had never felt in their lives. But at this moment, a long laugh reverberated throughout the inner abyss. "Lord of Nirvana, if you don't help the common people, I will." Su Yu leaped into the abyss, at the same time taking out the item he had kept with him for hundreds of years. It was something that no one knew about. The Tao Abyss Invitation. The Tao Abyss Invitation from the Blood Lotus Demon Path. Apart from Xiao Dai, no one else knew about this invitation. Even Yun Yazi did not know about it. Even the Lord of Nirvana knew nothing about it. Crash. The Tao Abyss Invitation fell into the abyss, immediately leading to the second path of the abyss. It led straight to the Taichu Palace. In their grief and indignation, the peerless powerful beings and the common people were ecstatic. There was something that could only be cherished if it was lost. Su Yu had previously given them the right to enter the path of the abyss, and they had at most thanked him for being a good person. But at this moment, they had been saved from the brink of death. Their hearts were surging with gratitude and respect that came from life. This kind of respect naturally turned into faith. The common people were in danger. The Lord of Nirvana had abandoned them. But Su Yu, who had the sacred body of the human clan, had saved them. If he was not worthy of faith, who else in this world was worthy of such faith? Endless power of faith gathered in Su Yu's body. Su Yu shouted, "All living beings, follow me into the abyss." The peerless powerful beings cheered excitedly, and the common people laughed as they jumped off the cliff one after another. All of them landed on the path of the abyss. When the last group of living beings had just jumped off, the thunder of annihilation poured down. The formation of the inner abyss melted like a piece of paper. Everything on the inner abyss was instantly destroyed into nothingness, leaving nothing behind. Even the ancient earth was melted 100 feet thick. Everything in the past was erased. All living beings looked back at the horrifying scene of destruction. Chills ran down their spines, and they were filled with lingering fear. If they had been any later, they would all have been buried here. But besides the lingering fear, their hearts were filled with monstrous resentment. Lord of Nirvana. The demon emperor took the lead, his demonic energy shocking the heavens. His facial features turned into those of a hideous demon, and he looked extremely terrifying. The heaven-splitting ancestor roared furiously, "Where do you think you're going?" For the first time, he threw off the chains that bound him and chased after Su Yu with a roar. Yun Yazi's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Lord of Nirvana is a scourge of nothingness. He must not be allowed to live. Countless bookshelves surrounded him, and he turned into lightning as he chased after Suyu. Many of the peerless powerful beings were also filled with hatred as they chased after him. Even the common people rushed forward without a care for their own safety. They only had one thought: kill the Lord of Nirvana. If he did not die, the will of the common people would not be appeased, and their hatred would not be extinguished. Kill the Lord of Nirvana! Kill! 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 The will of the common people of nothingness was unprecedentedly united at this moment. That was Chapter 2862. Nirvana Lord had already walked more than half of the path of the abyss. Suddenly, he heard the sounds of killing behind him. He turned to look. His calm face was now filled with shock. The second path of the abyss? Impossible! In the void, the only known Tao Abyss invitation letter was the one in her hand. Why was there a second one? But now was not the time to be shocked. Chief Protector hurriedly said, "Nirvana Lord, run!" His body was covered in cold sweat and his face was pale. Just now, Nirvana Lord had offended all living beings in the void. As a result, they all swore that even if they were to become vengeful spirits in their next lives, they would not let Nirvana Lord off. Now that they had escaped, they would definitely eat Nirvana Lord alive. Nirvana Lord shuddered. Things had developed in an unexpected way. Deep regret reverberated in his heart. But regret was useless. The peerless experts and common people were rushing over at top speed. Run! Nirvana Lord did not dare to move forward leisurely. He hurriedly led the Nirvana warship towards Taichu Temple. As long as he took the leaf inside, he would be able to cross the abyss. He would successfully enter the 9-star civilization. Kill! Led by the Demon Emperor and the others, the living beings began to chase after the Lord of Nirvana. As long as Nirvana Lord was not killed, he would not stop. Maybe it was because of the unity of all living beings that their consciousness merged into one and formed a powerful pressure. Just like how Nirvana Lord used his believers' pressure to suppress all the Almighties. At this moment, the pressure they formed also formed a huge pressure on Nirvana Lord. Nirvana Lord, who had instinctively reached Taichu Temple, immediately slowed down. In an instant, Demon Lord and the others closed the distance between them. Hearing the demonic roar, Nirvana Lord took out his remaining cavern world and released the faith within. Two diametrically opposed beliefs collided violently. One wanted to kill Nirvana Lord. The other wanted to protect Nirvana Lord. After a moment of stalemate, the faith of all living beings won. With an overwhelming advantage, they completely crushed the Lord of Nirvana's faith. Then, they suppressed Nirvana Lord's movement. Seeing Demon Lord and the others getting closer and closer, Nirvana Lord broke out in cold sweat. He had never felt so anxious before. "Wait a moment, we can talk things out," the Nirvana Lord said. The Demon Emperor sneered. "Go to hell and say that! Weren't you acting all high and mighty and despicable just now, acting as if I can decide your life and death? Only now do you remember to talk nicely? Get lost!" Patriarch Skysplitting's hatred soared. Holding the chain in his hand, he threw it at the Lord of Nirvana. At this moment, the Lord of Nirvana's faith was suppressed, and he had lost more than half of his strength. After all, he cultivated the path of faith. The most important aspect of strength was faith. The loss of faith would result in a great loss of strength. They couldn't withstand a vicious blow from the exposed heaven-shattering Patriarch. Just as the Nirvana Lord was about to receive the attack, suddenly, a shocking splash exploded from the abyss. The splashing water shattered heaven-splitting Patriarch's chains into 8 pieces. One of the water droplets struck heaven-splitting Patriarch, causing his body to collapse and his soul to be on the verge of dispersing. Fortunately, Suyu reacted quickly. In the instant that his soul collapsed, he made his move, reversing the flow of time. In the nick of time, Patriarch Heaven Splitter was saved. However, everyone was startled by the shocking splash. A single remaining drop of water had almost wiped out one of the strongest almighties among them. Who was the one who caused the splash? Gurgle. Right at this moment, a series of bubbles emerged from the center of the two paths into the abyss. More and more bubbles appeared, and they became denser and denser. Everyone's heart sank. Could it be an abyssal monster? Or could it be the worst of them all? Suyu was even more alarmed. His 8 great domains surged out uncontrollably. Was there a need to ask who was about to appear? Ancient God Jielong. He had appeared, just as everyone expected. Run! Suyu bellowed. Ancient God Jielong had appeared at this moment, deliberately saving the Lord of Nirvana and injuring heaven-splitting Patriarch. This was definitely not an unintentional move. He must have planned this for a long time. He had been waiting for this day. The group of almighties and common people felt a chill run down their spines, their hair standing on end as they ran. At this very moment, how could they care about the Lord of Nirvana? The Lord of Nirvana was also extremely fearful of ancient God Jielong, so he turned and ran. The two paths into the abyss began their desperate escape. At the same time, they were fleeing from a nightmarish existence. Gurgle. What made them terrified was that, as they ran forward, a series of bubbles emerged from beneath their feet. They could imagine it. It was ancient God Nine Dragon, who was chasing them down below. Ancient God Jielong had not appeared. However, the series of bubbles that kept following them gave them even more fear. Some of them were trembling from head to toe, unable to run even if they wanted to. Because there were so many of them, they were practically squeezed in the middle and forced to run. It was simply too terrifying. Walala, at this moment it was no longer just the series of bubbles. The abyss water beneath their feet began to churn. This proved that ancient God Jielong was rapidly rising to the surface. Once this happened, the abyss path could be smashed apart by ancient God Jielong's massive body. Everyone would be buried in the abyss. The thread of fate in front of Suyu's chest rose and fell in a complicated manner. Even he could no longer see through the changes in his fate. He might die. He might return to nothingness. He might even fall into the abyss and become an existence like ancient God Jielong. Rumble. Suddenly, a massive and savage tail covered in barbs suddenly rose up from the water. Then, it smashed into the abyss. The abyss path behind all the living beings was severed, and they all sank into the abyss. All the living beings trembled in fear. The demon emperor's eyes were also filled with fear as he roared, "Ancient God Jielong, you were once a member of the void. Why are you helping the sacred mountain against your former comrades?" Ancient God Nine Dragon's deep, resonant, and indifferent voice came from the bottom of the water. "Who is your compatriot? I am the #1 ancient god in the world. You ants cannot even be mentioned in the same breath as me." As he spoke, the abyss path suddenly began to rise and fall. Ancient God Jielong's massive head had sped up, creating massive wave. Suyu's heart sank. He glanced at the temple of Taichu, which was still some distance away, and roared, "Great spatial shift." He pushed the Yuan level space domain to its limit. All the living beings on the path of the abyss underwent an unprecedented super shift. Whoosh! Just as they were about to be shifted away, the abyss path beneath their feet was smashed into smithereens by a massive and savage head that had emerged from the water. Two eyes as red as volcanoes coldly and emotionlessly stared at the fleeing living beings. "All of you, come down and accompany me," ancient God Jielong indifferently said. His massive body fiercely twisted. It immediately caused massive waves to surge through the abyss. In just an instant, the abyss path twisted and contorted like a giant dancing snake. Chapter 2863. It looked like it was about to shatter. Suyu and the others had just finished teleporting. Their bodies were unsteady and they were about to fall. Ancient God Jielong took the opportunity to leap up. An enormous, terrifying body leapt into the air and crashed down on them. This pressure, no living creature could escape. They would all fall into the abyss. The living creatures were in utter despair. But at that moment, a gray current of air swept through the air, slapping ancient god Julong's body back into the abyss. Waves of tens of thousands of feet were raised. The waves came crashing down on the people on the path of the abyss. They would not be able to escape. All of you, run! A hoarse, deafening cry rang out. An extremely old white-haired man appeared in front of them. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and executed a technique that Su Yu was once very familiar with. Sky-splitting yin-yang style. Wizard Ancestor. At the crucial moment, the Wizard Ancestor, who had been enslaved by ancient god Julong, had appeared. He had used his sorcery energy to return ancient god Julong's body and block the waves of the abyss. Su Yu was moved. The Wizard Ancestor had dared to resist ancient god Julong. His fate was clear. He was using his life to fight for a chance for the people to escape. Hot tears welled up in Su Yu's eyes as he roared, "Go!" The roar jolted the stunned people back to their senses. Filled with emotion, they charged toward the Taichu temple one last time. Behind them, ancient god Julong's gloomy roar rang out. "Wizard Ancestor, a slave like you wants to resist me?" The Wizard Ancestor stood in front of the path of the abyss. His face was filled with determination. "Ancient god Julong, stop. For power, you have already lost your original heart." Although the original ancient god Julong's methods were despicable, his original intentions were the same as the people of nothingness. It was all for the sake of resisting the sacred mountain and restoring peace to Taichu. However, ancient god Julong had been in the abyss for many years and was no longer the ancient god Julong of the past. Now, he only wanted to seek greater power. To the point where he did not hesitate to drag the people he had once protected into the abyss and make them his slaves. "Power is the source of all change," ancient god Julong said coldly. The Wizard Ancestor knew that he could no longer dissuade ancient god Julong, so he could only stand in front of him. Ancient god Julong said emotionlessly, "You asked for too." Bang! His huge and ferocious tail suddenly lashed out from the abyss and whipped at the Grand Wizard, as well as the living beings on the path of the abyss. If the Grand Wizard stepped aside, then the common people would be wiped out. If you don't, he would be the one to bear it. With a strong sense of righteousness, the ancestor of Shaman yelled, "The world is boundless, and the ancestors are the pillars. Our ancestors are the backbone of this world." The human ancestor was like that. The dragon ancestor was like that. It was the same for the sorcerer ancestor. They were the backbone of the world, the forerunners who protected the common people. Anyone can step down. Only they could not. Bang! The giant tail descended. It fiercely swept across the body of the Grand Wizard, who, his body rapidly retreated, leaving a long trail of flames in the air. He blocked it. He used his own body to block ancient god Nine Dragon's tail. But his body was full of cracks, the blood of the ancestral which sprayed onto the living beings behind him. His blood formed a rain of blood, sprinkling on the faces of every living being, sprinkling on the hearts of every living being. As long as the common people exist, the ancestors shall not perish. The ancestral witch roared. His arms lifted ancient god Nine Dragon's tail. This gave the common people even more chances to escape. Ancient god Nine Dragon's eyes were indifferent. "If you were at your peak, you might have been able to fight a few rounds with me. But now you are too old." The ancestral witch, who had lived from the previous era until now, was already rotten beyond belief. Ancient god Nine Dragon's tail swung forcefully. Po, the ancestral witch, was pressed against the path of the abyss. He struggled powerlessly under the giant tail. But what was powerless was his body, not his will. "Su Yu, the future is in your hands," the ancestral witch roared. Po, ancient god Nine Dragon's giant tail pressed down once more. With a squelch, the ancestral witch's body was crushed into a bloody mist, completely disappearing from the world. An ancient ancestor had passed away just like that. As a slave, He had used his life to pave a path for the common people. At this moment, they were very close to the Taichu temple. In a few breaths they would be able to cross it. Go! The ancestral witch's dying cry echoed in Su Yu's ears. Grief and indignation reverberated in his heart. Ancient God Nine Dragon, one day I will make you regret this for the rest of your life. Su Yu roared at the top of his lungs. Ancient God Nine Dragon's eyes were indifferent. Say that when you have the chance. Suddenly, its huge body suddenly sank. The demon emperor and the others sensed that something was wrong and cried out, "Get to the shore!" They flew toward the Taichu temple. But just as they were about to reach the end of the path of the abyss at the end suddenly exploded. A savage head poked out from beneath the water. Two blood-red and sinister eyes were revealed, coldly staring at them. It's useless. None of you can escape. As it spoke, a terrifying red light began to brew in its massive eyes. This red light had the power to destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. It was enough to annihilate all the living beings on the path of the abyss and wipe them out of existence. This was a moment of life and death. A cold rebuke came. Ancient God Nine Dragon, it's been many years. I wonder if you can withstand one more blow from this body. The familiar cold voice caused Ancient God Nine Dragon's massive body to fiercely tremble. He recognized the source of the voice. His massive blood-red eyes flickered with fear. You didn't die? Back then. He was knocked into the abyss by a woman, which caused him to be trapped here for countless years. That woman was a sinful woman. Chief in the Heavenly Court's battleship among the common people. Sinful girl, who was sitting cross-legged on the deck, suddenly opened her pitch-black eyes. A terrifying power that could overturn heaven and earth erupted from his body. She took a step forward. The entire abyss sank down. She walked through the air, and every step she took had the power to overturn heaven and earth. Ancient God Nine Dragon's eyes were filled with fear as he madly sank into the water. The sinful lady's face was ice-cold as she unsheathed her sword. The sin sword in his hand turned into a black dragon and pierced into the water. Roar! Ancient God Nine Dragon roared in pain from the depths of the water. Countless people were shocked. It could actually injure Ancient God Nine Dragon? Was this sinful woman the scariest? The sinful girl floated in midair and said, "Still not coming ashore?" Everyone was startled and desperately went ashore. But he had not yet reached the shore. Suddenly, Ancient God Nine Dragon's massive tail emerged from the water and smashed it against the evil girl's body. Puff! The sinful girl's body exploded and her soul was extinguished. She plummeted straight into the abyss. Su Yu's eyes bulged as he grabbed the sinful girl. He raised his head. Ancient God Nine Dragon had resurfaced, appearing at the end of the abyss path. He blocked the path of all living beings. In his mouth was a pitch-black sword. He wasn't injured, he was just pretending. Ancient God Nine Dragon spat out the sin sword and sneered, "Do you really think I can't tell that you've only temporarily recovered your strength? You're an arrow at the end of its flight, yet you still want to contend with this ancient god?" The sinful girl had only temporarily reached her peak. But Ancient God Nine Dragon had completely surpassed his peak. Chapter 2864. The strength of both sides had long since undergone a complete upheaval. The sinful girl was still the sinful girl of the past. Ancient God Nine Dragons, on the other hand, had already been baptized by the abyssal water into a monster. Their strengths had long since been reversed. In Su Yu's arms, the evil girl's dispersed soul turned into fluorescent light that drifted in all directions. It was only by relying on a strong will that he managed to cling onto the surface of his body. Su Yu's heart was bleeding as he felt the sinful lady's body temperature rapidly disappearing. Rise from the dead. He tried to use the domain of life. However, it was unable to prevent the soul from dispersing. It was impossible to stop his life from slipping away. It was as if there was an invisible force that was obstructing everything. Don't waste your energy. That attack just now contained my death domain. You won't be able to save him with just your domain, ancient god Nine Dragon said sternly. It was also an elemental realm. However, ancient god Jiulong had cultivated for countless years, and his domain was more profound than Su Yu's. That was why it was ineffective. Su Yu wasn't willing to give up, so he used the spacetime domain. However, it was still blocked by the invisible power that remained on Sinful Girl's body. Su Yu's heart was bleeding as he watched the sinful woman disappear one after another. He shouted, "No!" How could he watch as this face, which was exactly the same as Xia Jingyu's, disappeared from his life? They were once enemies. Then we became friends. Later on, it was his benefactor. It was he who had used his own kiss to save him from being demonized. "I don't want you to die," Su Yu bellowed. He was trying his best to save the sinful woman, but it was all in vain. In front of ancient god Jiulong, Su Yu seemed abnormally weak. "My heart. I still have Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's heart." Su Yu thought of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's heart. If he used the blood inside, would he be able to awaken the chaotic energy in the evil girl's body and give her a chance to be reborn? However, at this moment, the sinful lady, whose consciousness was gradually fading away, raised her palm with great difficulty and covered Su Yu's chest. Feeling the beating heart, the sinful girl said weakly, "Don't, your heart. You have to keep it for Xia Jingyu." No. Su Yu couldn't accept the sinful woman's death, so he said resolutely, "No matter what price I have to pay, I must save you. I don't want you to die." Too many people had passed away in his life. He absolutely did not want to bear the burden of the death of someone close to him again. Su Yu pried open the sinful woman's hand and pointed his finger at his heart. He wanted to extract a drop of heart blood. Right now, he couldn't care less. The sinful girl's face twitched slightly. His lips moved up stiffly and slightly. That was laughter. This was the first time in her life that she had ever smiled. "I finally understand why Xia Jingyu and Qin Xiener are so devoted to you," the sinful woman said with relief. "You are worth it, even the heartless her." At this moment, she was touched by Su Yu. In his life, if there was a person who was willing to risk his life for him, regardless of loss or gain, even disregarding life and death, how could he not be moved? Su Yu did not say a word as he inserted his finger into his heart. The sinful lady's consciousness began to blur and she murmured, "Don't waste it. I'm someone who has died once. Now that I'm alive in this world again, I'm already very lucky. It's just a pity that I couldn't help you." The evil girl slowly closed her eyes. He could no longer speak. Her body was turning cold at an alarming speed. "No!" Sensing that the sinful lady was about to die, Su Yu's heart was filled with grief. Why did the people in his life always leave him one by one? Why? Was he too weak? Wasn't he? The ancient god Jiulong did not care about Su Yu's state of mind. An intense blood-red light was brewing in his eyes as he looked at the world with an indifferent expression. Pathetic little ants. Only the weak will grieve over the loss of their companions. Come with me and feel the great power. He was going to bring all the people into the abyss. Su Yu looked over. The gaze from his eyes was like a solid pillar of ice. At this moment, his hatred for the ancient god Jiulong had reached the peak. "You killed my wife, my old friend, and now you're going to kill my senior sister. You're going to destroy all my people." Su Yu put down the sinful lady. His eyes were bloodshot. Black flames surged uncontrollably all over his body once again. That was a sign of demonization. The difference was, in the past, demonization had been irrational. The current demonization was filled with endless madness. "You think your strength is above all else, don't you? You think you can decide the fate of the world, don't you?" Su Yu walked over fearlessly. He turned a blind eye to the dark red gaze. It was just a move in the air. The great scythe of 10,000 tribulations appeared in his palm. The ancient god Jiulong stared at Su Yu, his eyes narrowing slightly. He did not know why, but he actually felt a hint of danger. But as he sized up Su Yu, he could not see any part of him that could threaten him. Just based on the realm of the master of the heavenly law that he had just broken through? Just based on his Yuan realm, which was inferior to his own? Just based on the ordinary great scythe of 10,000 tribulations in his hand? But strangely, the ancient god Jiulong felt a hint of danger to his life. If he were facing someone else, he would probably be on his guard and retreat immediately. But facing Su Yu, he could not think of any danger. "Aunt, do you think I'm afraid of you?" The ancient god's eyes exploded, and a thick blood-red beam of light shot out. That beam of light could instantly destroy the path of the abyss, along with all the people on it. Su Yu did not retreat. He walked to the front of all living beings in one step. The pitch-black demonic shadow was like a giant that fought against the world alone, defending the battlefield and resisting the enemy. "Ancient God Jiulong," Su Yu bellowed. He then raised the scythe of 10,000 tribulations. He did not stab at ancient God Nine Dragon. Instead, it was aimed at him. To be exact, it was aimed at his own heart. Puff, the sharp great sickle of 10,000 tribulations pierced through Su Yu's clothes and flesh. It also pierced through the heart. Heavenly Prince Miraflower's stone heart was broken. The blood in his heart gushed out like a fountain. In an instant, the entire scythe of 10,000 calamity was dyed red. Xiao Dai once said that the myriad tribulations scythe required chaotic energy to activate. Wasn't the place with the densest chaotic force his heart's blood? Right now, the scythe of 10,000 tribulations was stained with the purest blood of chaos in the world. It would be stimulated like never before. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar came from inside the great scythe of 10,000 calamities. The entire scythe of 10,000 tribulations shook violently. The ear-piercing sound waves splashed the waters of the abyss on both sides 100 feet high. The two blood-red beams of light shot out by the ancient god Jiulong were instantly shattered by the roar. Not only that, ancient god Jiulong felt a stabbing pain in his eyes, and his whole body trembled violently. He cried out involuntarily, "The Taotai ancestor? Between heaven and earth." Chapter 2865. That Taotai had only lived for one epoch. However, the Taotai ancestor it mentioned was a creature that had existed since the beginning of absolute beginning. It was said that it was the spiritual pet of the first Taoist master in the world, the Taichu Taoist master. Later on, after the Taichu Daolord disappeared without a trace, the Taotai ancestor also went missing. Who would have thought that it would be refined into a Tao artifact? It looked at the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations in Su Yu's hand again. The long handle had turned into a pale spine at some point in time. The 9 black heads on it burned with golden flames. The originally black head was burned to a golden color. Subsequently, the 10th golden head slowly appeared. Fear appeared in ancient god Nine Dragon's eyes. Rumor had it that the Taotai ancestor had 10 heads. One was the main head, and the other 9 were the secondary heads. Among them, the most terrifying was the main head in the middle. Once the eyes were fully opened, the power would not be inferior to the destruction of an era. Ancient god Nine Dragon's massive body fiercely trembled. The 10th golden head was slowly opening its eyes. Furthermore, he was preparing to open them completely. "Stop!" Ancient god Nine Dragons let out a fearful roar. "The Taotai ancestor will not only kill me, but he will also suck the blood from your heart." The Taotai was an existence that could swallow anything. Apart from the Taichu Daoist master, no one could tame him. Once it fully opened its eyes, it would no longer be able to distinguish between friend and foe. Su Yu's reply was an even deeper sneer. He pressed down hard, and the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations pierced deeper into his heart. He laughed coldly. "Are you afraid? Regret? Didn't you want to exterminate all living beings? Come on." Ancient god Nine Dragons said hatefully, "Madman? What a lunatic! He was completely terrified. If they didn't leave now, they would wait for the Tautai ancestor to fully awaken. It was useless no matter where he hid. At this moment, how could ancient god Nine Dragon have any time to worry about these ants? How could he care about Suyu, a person he had to kill? Its huge body sank into the abyss. Who said you could leave? Suyu pulled out the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. He swung it down into the abyss like a madman. 10 golden light pillars descended with a rumble. This time, ancient god Nine Dragon once more screamed in pain. What was different was that this time, he was really screaming. Large patches of 9 colors appeared in the water of the abyss. This was the blood of ancient god Nine Dragon. Suyu held the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations in his hand and waved it towards the water. Again and again, and again and again. In the water, ancient god Nine Dragon, who hadn't been able to escape to the bottom of the abyss in time, continued to scream. As well as the 9-colored blood that kept surging up. Suyu, one day this ancient god will grind your bones to dust. Ancient god Nine Dragon's tiny voice came from the depths of the water. It was about to escape. Suyu furiously roared, "Die!" This attack happened to be at the moment when the eyes of the central head were opened to their widest. It spat out a different dark golden light from its mouth. Bang! The dark golden light shot into the water and directly swallowed up all the water in the vicinity. A bottomless pit that was 1,000 feet wide appeared. At the bottom of the abyss, a huge, pitch-black beast could be seen fleeing frantically towards the bottom of the abyss. The dark golden beam shot towards the giant shadow. The latter turned pale with fright and fled in panic. However, his body was still penetrated by the dark golden light. Roar and earth-shattering scream of extreme pain rose into the sky. The dark golden light had penetrated the lower half of ancient god Nine Dragon's body. 1,000 feet long bloody hole was formed in his body. The flesh and blood inside were all swallowed up by the dark golden light. Thus, his long tail and torso were severed. Suyu continued to wave the scythe like a madman, unwilling to give up and wanting to kill ancient god Nine Dragon. However, he had already taken the opportunity to escape deeper into the abyss. He couldn't attack him anymore. No! Suyu lost all reason and waved the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. A dark golden pillar of light struck the other abyss path, without any deviation. Bang! The abyss road where Nirvana Master was severed on the spot and shattered into pieces. What was even more surprising was, his Nirvana warship happened to be swept by the dark golden beam of light and was immediately swallowed up, leaving nothing behind. Nirvana Master's eyes were about to pop out of their socket. My ship! Those were the guardians and apostles he had painstakingly trained for countless years. And the various resources he had accumulated for 2 eras. He had planned to bring them to the 9-star civilization and use these resources, guardians and apostles, to establish an even larger faith organization. Now they were all destroyed. However, Nirvana Master's cry of alarm drew Suyu's attention. His eyes were blood-red as he bellowed, "You deserve to die too!" Nirvana Master was scared out of his wits, and cold air ran from the soles of his feet. He wanted to slap himself in the face. He had called for Suyu to come over. It was too late to say anything. Nirvana Master immediately went ashore and rushed into the Taichu Temple on the island. Suyu's great scythe of 10,000 tribulations arrived, and a dark golden beam of light bombarded the island. However, this island was extremely mysterious. The destructive power of the dark golden beam of light dissipated as it approached the island. The enemies had all fled. Suyu had no one to attack, so he finally stopped. The blood-red color in his eyes slowly receded. Looking at the devastation around him, Suyu sat down on the ground, exhausted. He put away the great scythe of 10,000 tribulations. Looking at his heart that was about to heal, endless exhaustion quickly engulfed him. It was an uncontrollable exhaustion. It was more intense than any other time. Su knew that he was going to fall into Prince Miraflower's dream again. No one could stop him. However, before he lost consciousness, Su crawled to the sinful lady with difficulty, and while the wound in his heart had not healed, he held her in his arms. Then, he dripped the last drop of blood from the wound in his heart into the sinful lady's mouth. It was just as she had guessed. After receiving the chaotic power of the Heavenly Sun's blood, the power of the domain left by ancient god Jiulong in the sinful lady's body disintegrated. Her injuries were recovering at an astonishing speed. Not long after, she regained consciousness. She looked at Su who was holding her in his arms. The sinful lady did not resist. For the first time, she showed a gentle expression and hugged the exhausted Su. Her eyes were moist. Although her consciousness was on the brink of collapse, she still dared to feel what was happening in the outside world. She looked at Su who had gone crazy and killed ancient god Jiulong at all costs for her. Her frozen heart was suddenly opened. For the first time, she had an impulse to stay by someone's side for the rest of her life, never to be separated. And that person was Su. Su's consciousness began to blur, and his eyelids kept drooping. He knew that he was about to fall into Prince Miraflower's dream. Prince Miraflower had failed last time. This time, he would never let Su escape again. The sinful lady sensed it, and her heart was nervous like never before. She tried to wake Su up. Don't sleep. Don't sleep. Chapter 2866. Soft lips touched. Su, who was about to fall asleep, suddenly shuddered. That kiss was so familiar. He opened his eyes again and looked at the evil woman who was close to him in confusion. His eyes were no longer cold, but gentle. For a time, Su had an illusion. The person in front of him was Xia Jingyu, not the evil girl. Fortunately, he was more clear-headed and understood that the person hugging him was not Xia Jingyu, who was far away in the 9-star civilization. She was just a sinful girl. Thank you. As soon as Su spoke, he felt sleepy again. He knew. There was no way he could escape this time. While he was still awake, he had to make arrangements for the common people. Quickly get on the island. Su shouted with all his might. The peerless Almighties could only temporarily put aside their worries about Su and lead the crowd into the island. Su arrived at the island with the help of the sinful woman. He faced the ancient Taichu temple on the island. From the common people to the peerless Almighties, they all had a kind of respect that came from the bottom of their hearts. Taichu Temple, in the great hall built by the first Daolord. In the past, it was the holy land of martial arts that all martial artists yearned for. It was the most mythical place in people's hearts. Right now, there was no one inside. There were too many living beings and they couldn't all enter. They waited outside. The peerless powerhouses entered in their place to pluck the leaves and cross the remaining abyss. The group entered. The Hall of Absolute Beginning had been abandoned for many years, but shockingly, it was still completely spotless. It was as if someone was taking care of it every day. All the items were arranged neatly and looked as clean as new. Su, look. Isn't that your heavenly orchid silver bamboo? Xiao Dai had appeared out of nowhere. He excitedly pointed at the flowers and plants on both sides of the entrance of the hall. Among them, there was a silvery bamboo forest that was especially eye-catching. Su looked over and couldn't help but be shocked. It's true. Thousands of heavenly orchid silver bamboos grew densely there, dancing in the wind. Little butterfly grew out of the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, so she had a special feeling for this divine tree. She licked her lips and strode forward, ready to pull one or two out to taste. However, Su pressed down on his shoulder. Are you tired of living? Su glared at her. Xiao Dai looked around. Why? Su pointed at the surroundings. Do you think you're the only one who recognized the heavenly orchid silver bamboo? From ancient times till now, it was unknown how many epochs it had experienced. Countless people have come to Taichu Temple, right? Why are they still alive? Xiao Dai thought about it carefully. That's true. After some thought, Xiao Dai took out a stone and threw it far away. A shocking scene appeared. When the stone hit the heavenly orchid silver bamboo, a ripple that was so weak that it was almost invisible appeared on it. With a light shake, the stone was shattered into powder. That was not all. When the powder fell to the ground, another ripple shot out from the green bricks on the ground, crushing the powder into nothingness. Everyone who was about to step into the Hall of Absolute Beginning suddenly took a step back. Even the peerless mighty figures were filled with fear. They finally understood why the uninhabited Taichu Hall was untainted by even a speck of dust. That was because there were restrictions in the Hall of Absolute Beginning. Everything that entered it was crushed into nothingness. How do we get there? Everyone was at a loss. If he couldn't enter the Hall of Taichu, how could he pluck the leaves? Suyu was full of doubts. Master, where did you get the news that the Hall of Absolute Beginning has leaves that can lead to the 9-star civilization? Suyu asked in surprise. He had a rather bad feeling in his heart. Yun Yazi said thoughtfully, I heard it from a few peerless mighty figures after I came to the inner abyss. Suyu couldn't help but look at them. Who said that? But who knew? The dozens of peerless mighty figures looked at each other. They had all heard it from others. None of them had ever said so. Suyu suddenly felt that there was a problem. Everyone, look at each other and see who was the first to spread the news, Suyu said. With his current prestige, he could order them around. A group of peerless mighty figures asked each other. Finally, after tracing the source, they suddenly realized something. The first to say it was the Master of Nirvana. It's him. Suyu thought to himself. There was a big problem with this statement. In the past, everyone was still confused by the appearance of the Master of Nirvana and admired him. Therefore, they did not question it. Now it seemed that there was a big problem. The Hall of Absolute Beginning could be shattered into nothingness if they took even a step inside. How could they allow living creatures to enter? For a moment, the crowd immediately panicked and became restless. Now that the inner abyss had been destroyed, the path back to the abyss had also been destroyed by ancient god Jilong. There was no way forward again. Were they going to be trapped on the island? Don't panic, everyone. Check the surroundings carefully first, Suyu said decisively. The Master of Nirvana had entered the Hall of Absolute Beginning himself. Why was he fine? He must have hidden the key point. The most important thing now is to find the clues left behind by the Master of Nirvana, Suyu analyzed calmly. He had to point out a way for the people before he passed out. Clang. But right at that moment, the giant gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning behind them slammed shut. Oh no! Suyu immediately realized that something was wrong. He didn't have to think to know that the Master of Nirvana was behind this. Everyone rushed back, trying to reopen the giant gate in panic. However, Suyu shouted loudly, "Stop!" His voice drowned out the people, but it could not suppress the panic in their hearts. They still rushed towards the gate. They had no choice. Suyu took out the cavern world he had obtained and released all the faith in it. It was only under the pressure of faith that the common people were suppressed. Suyu said seriously, "The more dangerous the moment, the calmer you must be. Don't panic." He added, "The Master of Nirvana closed the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. He must have expected that you would turn back towards the gate. There must be dangers beyond your imagination there." Everyone felt that it made sense, but they were imprisoned in the dangerous Hall of Absolute Beginning. Who didn't want to get lucky? What if the gate could be opened and there was no danger? "Step back, I'll show you," Suyu shouted. After everyone stepped back, Suyu took out the incarnation of the past. The latter nodded and came to the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. It pushed hard with both hands, trying to push the gate open. But the strength of the incarnation of the past was reflected back tenfold by the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. There was a bang. The incarnation of the past was shattered into a bloody mist on the spot. At the same time, Countless ripples burst out from the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning, crushing the bloody mist into nothingness. All living beings sucked in a cold breath. Their scalps went numb. What Suyu said was right. The Master of Nirvana was forcing them to open the gate of the Hall of Absolute Beginning. They couldn't imagine what would happen if all of them tried to open the gate. How terrifying would it be when everyone's strength was reflected back tenfold? Except for a few rare peerless masters, wouldn't they all die without a burial place? Holy Body Su, please show us the way. At this moment, all the people were sincerely convinced by Suyu. Who would dare to disobey him? Their faith in Suyu now surpassed even that of the Renzu. The Renzu was too ethereal, but Suyu was in front of them, a living god of protection. Chapter 2867. Suyu pointed to the depths of the Taichu Palace with the help of the evil girl. That is your way out, Suyu said calmly and forcefully. The people were confused. They were trapped here because they could not enter that place. Suyu said, the Lord of Nirvana can control the closing of the giant door, so he must know the existence of some mechanism. He must be in the depths of the palace. As long as you look hard, you will find the traces left by the Lord of Nirvana. In fact, while Suyu was speaking, he had already noticed some clues. However, he was about to fall into a coma. In the future, he might not be able to do anything for the people. Therefore, they needed to learn how to help themselves. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. The people immediately began to search. 3 heads were better than 1. With so many pairs of eyes, they would naturally find something. Hey! There seems to be a speck of dust on this bluestone brick. Finally, one of the creatures noticed. The people looked in the direction of his gaze. They clearly found that there was a speck of dust on a bluestone brick. If they looked closely, they would also find that the bluestone brick had been carefully cleaned. However, there was still a speck of dust left, which they did not notice. There is a seal on the bluestone. How can there be no reaction when the dust falls on it? The people's hearts immediately became active. Let me try. One of them took a stone and threw it on it. As a result, the stone was safe and sound. The people could not help but be pleasantly surprised. Not all places have seals. To them, this was an extremely exciting piece of news. The Demon Emperor understood and stepped forward. Step back. He grabbed a handful of dust from the cavern world and threw it forward. The dust fell to all corners of the palace. As a result, most of the dust was crushed into powder. Only the bluestone bricks without seals were left, covered with a thick layer of dust. And the dust-covered bluestone led directly to the depths of the Taichu Palace. That was the way out. Great. Finally, there is a way out. Suyu smiled. I will go in front and you will follow behind, one by one. There were only about 50 people following them, so they did not have to worry about wasting too much time. Suyu stepped on the bluestone and arrived at the depths of the palace. There were 3 doors here, each leading to a different area. After all living beings rushed over, they fell into confusion. Could it be that we need to split up? A peerless supreme being analyzed. Suyu shook his head slightly. Are you sure that the 2 extra doors are real? The Taichu Temple was a martial arts sacred ground founded by the Taichu Taoist master. The purpose was to rest and discuss martial art. The plants and trees in the courtyard and the limestone slabs on the ground were there to prevent people from destroying them, so it was reasonable for them to set up restrictions. However, what was the use of specially setting up 2 more doors? Did he want people to guess riddles, and whoever guessed correctly could enter? Obviously not. If he was not wrong, 2 of the doors were fake, and full of danger. Suyu squinted his eyes and searched carefully. After a while, he had an idea. This time, he chose to let them deal with it themselves. Sage Su's meaning is that this is also the doing of the Lord of Nirvana? A creature asked. Suyu nodded and said, I can only tell you this. If you all go to the 9-star civilization, what will happen to the Nirvana Lord? Of course, he would be ganged up on by them and die. Before going to the 9-star civilization, he will try his best to put us to death to reduce his own threat. That was all he said. The rest was for the common people to think about. Sure enough, after Su Yu's reminder, they immediately understood what he meant. Carefully test the 3 doors. The group of people all retreated cautiously. Heaven's splitting ancestor pulled out a chain and threw it at the middle door. However, as soon as the chain opened the door, a gust of black air spurted out. In an instant, the chain was destroyed into molten iron. Seeing that the situation was not good, Heaven's splitting ancestor dodged in time. Even so, he was scratched a little, and he was bleeding all over on the spot. This was because of his powerful cultivation. It was conceivable. If it had been an ordinary creature opening this door, what would have happened? Everyone would have died. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air and rejoiced. Fortunately, Su Yu had reminded them. Otherwise, they would have lost at least 2 groups of people. Heaven's splitting ancestor struck while the iron was hot and tried to test the other 2 doors. Sure enough, one of the doors was fake. The leftmost door was the real entrance to the inner yard. At that time, in a corner, the Nirvana Master's face was gloomy as he slammed his fists on a stone table. Deep fist marks were left on the table. How troublesome! The Nirvana Master said bitterly. If not for Su Yu's reminder, this group of people and peerless powerful people who came in would have been wiped out. However, Su Yu not only had incredible foresight, but he was also extremely smart. He was even more experienced than the peerless powerful people of the older generation. He was observant and observant. Now, in the end, he could not stop them, and they broke into the inner yard. He snorted, left the secret room, and quickly came to a small independent yard. In the yard there was a strange ancient tree. It was covered with giant leaves shaped like small boat. Looking at the tree, the Nirvana Master smiled coldly. I don't believe you can see through everything. He plucked a leaf, put it in the space storage device, and hid in the dark. Su Yu and the others opened the real door and arrived at the inner yard. The inner yard was a place to rest, and also a place to practice martial art. There was also an open-air platform. There were many ancient marks left on it. Those marks were left by the peerless powerful people who came to the Taichu Palace to discuss martial arts. Many years had passed. The marks were still there, but the powerful people had long disappeared in the dust of history. This time, without Su Yu saying anything, they were already extremely vigilant. The demon emperor grabbed a handful of sand and threw it out. In the end, except for the planted spiritual plants and trees, the rest of the land could be set foot on, and there were no barriers. We can move freely here. Everyone was delighted, and they rushed into the yard. They were most curious about the ancient platform. It was the place where the saints of the past discussed martial art. Many peerless powerful people's first goal was to go up there and see the legendary holy land of martial arts. Su Yu could not help but be curious. Help me up there. The sinful lady had a gentle look on her face as she helped Su Yu up the ancient platform. When they stepped on the stairs, Su Yu felt an inexplicable sense of desolation. His heart, which had been silent for a long time, was surging. He had a kind of heroic impulse to compete with the heroes of the world. When he touched the marks on it, Su Yu felt the intensity of the reincarnation path in the past. In the end, they went up the ancient platform. Their whole body was filled with unimaginably fierce fighting spirit. Chapter 2868. Hey! This is the magical power of our wood ancestor, a peerless expert said in surprise. On the platform, he found the magical power of the wood ancestor that he was only proficient in. This is the magical power of our Yu ancestor. Oh my God, isn't this the magical power of our bird ancestor? Everyone found that the secret skills they were proficient in were all left on the platform. They were all ancestor-level existences who had survived from the last era. They were the ancestors of a certain kind of creature that had never been seen before and would never be seen again. However, the secret skills they created were all similar to those on the platform. What's going on? It seems to be more profound and mysterious than mine. Mine too. Who left these behind? Suyu was thinking. All living creatures had existed since ancient times. It was believed that 2 epochs ago, each race also had their own race's strongest powerhouse. However, they might not have called themselves ancestors. Just like in the current era, there were only 9 great ancient gods, but no ancestors. A long time ago, there were ancestors of the same race who reached the peak of their race and came to this holy land of martial arts to practice martial arts. Suyu's heart skipped a beat. The 9 great realms had existed since ancient times and were not exclusive to the 9 great ancient gods. Were there any remnants of the 9 great realms on it? He searched one by one. Strangely, there were no 9 great realms. As for the last mysterious domain, Suyu didn't even know what it was. However, he couldn't find any of the other 8 great realms. How is this possible? Suyu was puzzled. Could it be that no one had practiced the 8 great realms before this era? This shouldn't be the case. It seems that there are no traces of the 8 great realms. The sinful lady was helping to search. She found the realm of sin, an extremely rare remnant of the realm. She couldn't find the 8 great realms. Could it have been destroyed by someone? Suyu pondered for a moment. There were indeed some damages on the platform. Some seemed to have been fought a long time ago. There were some who weren't. But who could it be? Everyone found something, except Suyu, who found nothing. Seeing that everyone had almost digested the remnants, he said, "It's time to go. Everyone, split up and search each room. Whatever you find will depend on your own fate. If you run into danger, that's your fate." They had already arrived at the holy land of martial arts of the Taichu Temple, so it would be a shame if they did not gain anything. As for Suyu, he sat cross-legged on the platform and prepared to rest. His heart was filled with endless fatigue. Faintly, he was about to fall into a deep slumber. Right now, he was relying on his willpower to persevere. Persevere until all living beings have crossed the abyss. But he didn't expect. The moment Suyu sat on the platform, all kinds of secret techniques in his body were automatically released. The first was the human clan's divine physique, followed by the 8 domains, and then the various secret techniques he had learned in his life. From the blue sky underworld to the heavens sun gazing at air, when he first entered the martial path. Without exception, all of them were released. But what was even more shocking was yet to come. As soon as the secret technique appeared, all the carvings on the platform were activated. Every notch turned into a blurry residual shadow, fighting against the secret technique displayed by Suyu. Suyu was dazzled and surprised by the sight. The competition between the moves was very fast. Almost every time they exchanged blows, they would switch to another secret technique. And once Suyu's secret technique failed, it would disappear completely. Just like that. After half an hour, Suyu was left with only one secret technique left on the platform. It was a secret technique that Suyu had never thought of. The heavens sun gazing at air. Even the human clan's divine physique and the 8 domains were defeated by a certain tyrannical existence's precious technique. Only the heavens sun gazing at air remained standing, defeating all the remnant marks one by one. The heavens sun gazing at air? Suyu himself was stunned. The sinful lady beside him was even more surprised. She had fought with Suyu many times and felt that the human clan's divine physique was the greatest threat. The other techniques, including the heavens sun gazing at air, were not worth mentioning at all. How could it defeat all the remnant marks? Unbelievable! The sinful lady exclaimed. Your heaven's sun gazing at air has defeated all the remnant marks left by the powerful beings since ancient times. Isn't this impossible? There were countless eras since ancient times, and there were countless powerful beings. It was even possible that there were beings who surpassed the human ancestor. For example, the master of the remnant technique that defeated the human clan's divine physique must have been shockingly powerful, comparable to the human ancestor. However, the heaven's sun gazing at air could defeat their remnant marks. It was unbelievable. Su Yu's heart thumped with excitement. The heaven's sun gazing at air came from the bronze plate. Just now, many peerless powerful beings had actually touched the platform, but Su Yu had not encountered such an encounter. Could it be that everything was related to the bronze plate? Su Yu took out the half of the bronze plate that he had. He looked around and found that there was no inlay, so he placed it on the platform. An unexpected scene appeared. All the remnant marks on the platform were converging towards the half of the bronze plate. Those remnant marks carried some particles from the platform. As they gathered, the particles converged into a block, and the block condensed into a plate. That was it. Su Yu watched as the broken part of the bronze plate was mended, and there was another half of it. When all the remnant marks had been absorbed, the bronze plate was completely formed. This is the complete bronze plate? The sinful lady blinked her eyes, unable to hide her surprise. Su Yu also felt incredible. He had imagined what the other half of the bronze plate looked like. Most of all, the other half was also a bronze plate. However, he never thought of it. The other half of the bronze plate turned out to be the remnant marks of the martial Holy Land of the Taichu Temple. Looking carefully, countless tiny remnant marks appeared on the other half of the bronze plate. There were as many as tens of thousands of them. Each of them represented the top secret technique of a certain race. The other half of the bronze plate contained the top techniques of all the races in the world. One could imagine how precious it was. If it was known, it would definitely cause a worldwide uproar. If the Holy Mountain knew about it, they would destroy it at all cost, because its existence would undoubtedly enhance the overall strength of all the races, and it was a great threat to the races that ruled them. But Su Yu was not most concerned about them. He was concerned about how to communicate with the realm of returning through the bronze plate. He looked left and right, but he did not see any clues. The two bronze plates were combined, but there was no obvious change. The golden ancient book that the chess boy once gave me clearly stated that the bronze plate was the divine tablet of the returning ruins that suppressed the realm of returning. Later, it was destroyed by the chaos and disappeared. One of the pieces fell into the hands of the former Soul Dominator. He did not expect the other piece to be in the martial Holy Land. It must have been hidden in the martial Holy Land by the Taichu Taoist master or some other powerful person. Only when the two bronze plates met would it emerge from the Holy Land. Chapter 2869. The Golden Ancient Book had said that mastering the refining method would allow one to master the ultimate divine tablet. What Su Yu lacked now was to refine it and make it his own. If he succeeded, he might be able to discover the secret of its connection to the ultimate world. He felt reassured. He heaved a sigh of relief. The bronze plate, no, the ultimate divine tablet, had finally been restored. He was one step closer to saving Xiener, Xiexiaoye, and the little Kailan. Holy Body Su, I found an independent courtyard with a very strange tree inside. Come and have a look. A peerless expert came out of a spacious training room excitedly. Really? Hearing this, the other peerless mighty figures and living beings stopped searching for treasures one after another and entered that independent secret room. Su Yu also rushed over. There was another world in this training room. This painting was connected to another place. Through the painting, a huge ancient tree in the shape of a small boat could be seen swaying in the painting. That must be the leaf they were looking for. Soon, Yun Yazi came over. He looked at an ancient book and said happily, "It's this. This is it." However, after the previous lessons, everyone was very cautious. They did not enter the painting without permission. Su Yu was very pleased. "Some of you go in, some stay," Su Yu said. Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor said, "We stay," The rest go in and pick as many leaves as possible. There were many of them, so 1 or 2 leaves might not be enough. Follow me. Su Yu waved his sleeves and led the others into the painting. After testing and confirming that there was no danger in the world of the painting, they came under the ancient tree and began to pick the leaves. The leaves were picked off one by one. The whole process was very smooth. In fact, it was uncomfortably smooth. The heaven-splitting ancestor looked around from time to time and frowned. Is there a problem here? He did not see the trap set by the Lord of Nirvana. Su Yu looked around vigilantly. There should be no trap. Continue picking. Soon, the last leaf was picked off. The ancient tree was bare. Let's go back immediately, Su Yu said immediately. Since the task was completed, it was better not to stay in such an unstable independent space. However, when they tried to go back, they were shocked. The way back had actually disappeared. What's going on? Patriarch Skysplitting looked around. Did the spatial exit move? Every space had its own entrance and exit. There were no exceptions. The spatial exit should be somewhere else. If he searched carefully, he should be able to find it. However, even after searching for a long time, a hint of uneasiness appeared on his face. He still couldn't find the exit. There's no need to look for it. There really isn't a space exit in this place. Su Yu slowly opened his eyes. He had tested it with his space domain. There was no spatial exit here. That's impossible. There's no such thing as a completely sealed spatial exit, Patriarch Skysplitting said. Any space is created by human beings. Just like a balloon, no matter what, there would always be a hole. Su Yu said gravely, you have forgotten about another space, the real world. What? Heaven-splitting Patriarch trembled violently. There was no one in the true world who did not know him. Their dream was to create their own true world and become an existence that could control their own fate. The real world, on the other hand, was a completely sealed space without any exit. The real world of this place must have been set up so that people can only enter but not leave, Su Yu murmured. If I'm not mistaken, the ancient tree in our hands is fake. Heaven-splitting Patriarch looked down. What he could not accept was that the leaves that he had painstakingly picked had all withered. Those were not leaves at all. It's the Nirvana Master. He has been deceiving us from the beginning. We have been fooled. Heaven-splitting Patriarch finally came to his senses. The ancient tree in the painting was a bait set up by the Nirvana Master to lure them into it. In the end, there was nothing left. No. Su Yu was still calm. He said, we are not the ones who have been fooled, but the Nirvana Master. Su Yu's lips curled into a cold smile. In the outside world, the Demon Emperor and Yun Yazi were shocked to find that Su Yu and Heaven-splitting Patriarch were trapped inside. Oh no, they seemed to be in trouble. The Demon Emperor squinted his eyes. Right at that moment, a gloomy voice came from a corner. The two of them looked sideways. The space in the corner vibrated, and a man walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. He was none other than the Nirvana Master. It's you. The two of them immediately realized that this was a trap set up by the Nirvana Master. First, Su Yu, who posed the greatest threat, was trapped in the painting. Then, he attacked them without hesitation and killed the Almighties one by one. You too, you have caused me so much trouble. The Nirvana Master's eyes were filled with cold, murderous intent. Thanks to them, his heavenly quartz battleships had all been destroyed. His life's work had been destroyed. Of course, he had to vent his hatred on the two of them. If they had not protected Su Yu, he would not be here today. Nirvana Master, let them go. The two of them shouted in unison. The Nirvana Master's eyes were cold. You should be worried about yourselves now. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness as he attacked the two of them at the same time. The two of them were shocked at first. The Nirvana Master's ruthlessness was unimaginable. However, after losing half of his faith, the Nirvana Master's strength was greatly reduced. Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor were shocked. They immediately calmed down and fought with the Nirvana Master. Both of their cultivations were extremely powerful. When they attacked, the world was turned upside down. Fortunately, this was the Taichu Palace. Such an intense battle did not harm a single brick or tile in this place. The two of them fought back and forth. After a long stalemate, the Nirvana Master finally came out on top. With the threat of faith, he severely injured the two of them. In the end, he found an opening and tore Yun Yazi's chest. Tian Shu Dao Master. The Demon Emperor roared angrily. He fought the Nirvana Master fearlessly with his demonic energy. However, the two of them could not defeat the Nirvana Master even if they joined forces. Moreover, they were alone. The Nirvana Master immediately twisted his head off. The Demon Emperor's huge body twisted a few times before he lost all ability to move. The Nirvana Master let out a breath of turbid air and looked at the painting on the wall with a cold smile. Su Yu and the heaven-splitting ancestor were completely unaware of what was happening outside. You will be trapped in there forever. You will never be able to come out. The Nirvana Master laughed and walked away with his hands clasped behind his back. He took a step forward. Logically speaking, with his cultivation, he could travel infinitely far with a single step. However, with this step, he returned to his original spot. The corpses of Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor were still beneath his feet. What happened? The Nirvana Master's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling. Right at that moment. Chapter 2870. The Nirvana Master had always been cunning. Upon hearing Su Yu's words, he knew that he had fallen into a trap. He immediately teleported in another direction. However, when he teleported again, he returned to the same place. Unable to believe it, he tried to break through in different directions. The result was the same. Everyone returned to the same place. What did you do? The Nirvana Master asked in shock. Su Yu, who was in the painting, smiled faintly. I gave them a taste of their own medicine, of course. A painting within a painting? He seemed to have understood something. He looked down at the corpses of Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor. However, to his surprise, the corpses of the two quickly decayed and dissolved. At the same time, the surroundings were also dissolving. He watched helplessly as the individual cultivation room he was in gradually turned into a beautiful grassland with beautiful scenery. In the center of the grassland, there was a giant tree swaying in the wind. The tree was covered with leaves of a small boat. This is... The Nirvana Master's expression changed drastically. A hint of fear and panic rippled in his eyes. The painting in front of him also dissolved in the end. Su Yu smiled faintly. Stay here forever and reflect on your mistakes. No! As the painting disappeared, the Nirvana Master threw himself at it and let out an indignant roar. However, what he threw himself at was just an illusion. Looking at the sealed world around him, the Nirvana Master roared like a madman. This was the real world of the Taichu Path Master. He could not understand why he had tricked Su Yu and the others into entering the painting. Why was he the one trapped in the real world? In the outside world, Yun Yazi, the Demon Emperor, and the heaven-splitting ancestor were shocked. Their dazed and lifeless eyes regained clarity. Yun Yazi and the Demon Emperor could not help but look at their own bodies. What happened? Didn't I die just now? The Demon Emperor said in shock. Yun Yazi looked at Su Yu with a hint of horror on his face. The heaven-splitting ancestor stared blankly at the painting on the wall in front of him. In the painting, the Nirvana Master was roaring and struggling. What is going on? The heaven-splitting ancestor murmured. Su Yu's face turned pale. This is my latest soul secret technique. This technique originated from the remnant marks on the Ultimate Ruins Divine Monument. One of them had been left behind by a top-notch expert of a race called the Soul Clan a long time ago. He had used his soul power to create a supreme illusion. To confuse the real with the fake, to confuse the ages, no one could avoid this. As the owner of the real realm, Su Yu could tell that it was a real realm when they arrived in front of it. Once they entered, they would not be able to leave. Therefore, he speculated that the ancient tree inside was definitely a trap set by the Lord of Nirvana. And the Lord of Nirvana was definitely nearby. Hence, he decided to beat him at his own game. Rather than being constantly schemed against by the Nirvana Master, it was better to lure the snake out of its hole and get rid of it completely. Therefore, he used the soul secret technique in the remnant mark to create an illusion to confuse everyone. The heaven-splitting ancestor thought that he and Su Yu had entered the painting, but in fact, he was standing there motionless. The Devil Emperor and Yun Yazi thought that they had fought a great battle with the Lord of Nirvana and died in battle, but in reality, they hadn't even moved a finger. As for the Lord of Nirvana, he thought that he had succeeded in his scheme and appeared from his hiding place, but in reality, he was walking towards the painting. It had to be said that the secret soul technique was very powerful. Even someone as powerful as the Lord of Nirvana did not notice it. After they understood the cause and effect, Yun Yazi and the others instantly felt that it was inconceivable. The secret soul technique of the ancestors was extremely frightening indeed. When they noticed the Lord of Nirvana, who was trapped in the real world, they were extremely delighted. This insidious thing has finally suffered the consequences of his own actions. The Devil Emperor laughed heartily. From now on, he would stay in the painting for the rest of his life, never to come out again. Let's go. Actually, Su Yu still had a way to deal a fatal blow to the Lord of Nirvana. However, his consciousness was getting more and more exhausted. If he didn't pave the final path for the common people, he wouldn't have another chance. The group left the training room and started searching for the Land of Leaves again. Soon after, the Devil Emperor found the real ancient tree. This tree had been hidden by a formation, so no one had discovered it when they were searching just now. The person who had hidden it was undoubtedly the Lord of Nirvana. Su Yu and the others immediately plucked all the leaves and left the Taichu Palace to reunite with the common people. At this moment, the common people were scattered in the Tao abyss, looking for their own opportunities. It was very chaotic. Su Yu furrowed his brows. Reunite with them and get ready to leave. Little did they know, in the Taichu Palace, from a certain corner, a figure suddenly appeared and headed straight for the secret cultivation room where the Nirvana Lord was. He wore a bamboo hat and hid his aura very well. Looking at the painting on the wall, he took off the bamboo hat and revealed Gu Taishu's face. Haha, Lord of Nirvana, to think you would have such a day. It turned out that Gu Taishu had been mingling with the common people and had followed Su Yu to the island. Moreover, he had observed everything that was happening in the Taichu Palace through a secret technique. When he found out that the Lord of Nirvana was sealed in the real world, he was wild with joy. He tried his best to sneak in. He chuckled and took down the painting. He licked his lips excitedly and said, "I'll accept everything you have." With a cold smile, he put on the bamboo hat again and blended into the crowd. When he hurried back, Su Yu had almost reunited with the common people. Looking at Su Yu, who was commanding the people, Gu Taishu felt complicated. Compared to Su Yu, the difference between him and Su Yu was like heaven and earth. When Su Yu looked at him, he immediately lowered his head and continued to hide. Su Yu stood on the high platform and glanced at the people. His eyes narrowed slightly as he said, "There is one more person among us." Gu Taishu's heart thumped wildly when he heard this. What kind of eyesight was Su Yu? There were countless people in the crowd. How could he tell that there was one more person? Gu Taishu's heart sank as he thought of Su Yu's incredible calculation abilities. He would find me soon. Gu Taishu was anxious. What should I do? What should I do? I will be exposed soon. He continued to hide, hoping that even if there were many people, he might not be able to find me. Right at that moment, Su Yu said coldly, "Most of the people here have been instilled with my chaotic energy. So, don't waste time on this person who has snuck into the crowd. It will be easy to find you." Gu Taishu's heart thumped. He had almost forgotten. His chaotic energy was instilled by Qin Yun. It was completely different from the chaotic energy instilled by Su Yu. Su Yu could obviously sense the change in the number of people. As long as he carefully investigated the people instilled by Qin Yun, he would be found soon. While his mind was in a mess, Su Yu's eyes sharpened. Since you don't want to show yourself, I will really have to find you. An unknown person had snuck into the crowd. This was no small matter. He must not be careless. Just as Gu Taishu's psychological defense was about to be broken, a smelly old man with a sack draped over his shoulders said in a hoarse voice, "There is no need to look, it's me." Chapter 2871. The people around them parted immediately. Gu Taishu was also surprised. He immediately lowered his head and stepped aside. He thought that the extra person was him. He didn't expect there to be someone else. But that wasn't right. Where did this person come from? Gu Taishu sized him up discreetly and discovered that he was extremely skinny. His spirit was dispirited and listless, and he seemed to be in dire straits. He looked like a starving man who had been imprisoned for a long time. Su Yu cast his gaze over and sized him up in surprise as well. The people in the inner abyss had abundant resources. How could someone be so miserable? Who are you? Su Yu stared at him, his eyes flickering. For some reason, the 8 realms he had mastered were resonating with each other. The old man in linen walked forward and took off the linen cloth on his head, revealing an extremely old head. He said hoarsely, "I am the 9th realm master you have been looking for." Su Yu's pupils constricted. The 9th realm master. To be honest, he wasn't surprised. Before coming to the Taichu temple, he had been thinking about where the 9th realm master who had escaped into the Taichu temple was. When he realized there was one more person among them, Su Yu had guessed it. It was probably the 9th realm master who was hiding. Su Yu stared at him, his eyes deep. "Why didn't you leave?" The 9th realm master had been here for many years. Why didn't he leave? "How could I leave?" The 9th realm master laughed bitterly. Upon closer inspection, the crowd realized there was no chaotic aura on the 9th realm master. "What happened to you?" Su Yu's eyes narrowed. He looked at the 9th realm master carefully, trying to find traces of the 9th realm on him. But he found nothing. There wasn't even a trace of cultivation. "I was betrayed by my own realm." The 9th realm master said shocking words. He was betrayed by his own realm? Was this a joke? Even the powerful Du Ming, who had traversed 2 eras, was shocked and in disbelief. "You must be joking. How could a realm betray itself?" The heaven-splitting ancestor's eyes widened. He had lived for so long and had never heard of such a thing. The 9th realm master looked at Su Yu and smiled bitterly. "Whether it's true or not, Holy Su should know." Everyone looked at Su Yu. Su Yu was silent for a long time. He didn't have the power of the realm on him, but whether the realm betrayed him or not is unknown. After all, the domain could be taken away. Moreover, he found it hard to believe that the domain would betray him. This was simply absurd. The old man said bitterly, "I was too greedy and gathered the 9 great domains in one body. I didn't expect that after the 9 great domains merged into one, it actually fused into an unimaginable existence." Su Yu's heart moved. He suddenly believed the old man's words. That was because the remnant marks on the sinkhole ruined divine steel that contained information about the 8 domains had all disappeared. Why did the 8 domains on the martial arts sacred land disappear? The old man said helplessly, "It's the work of the 9 great domains. It has developed its own intelligence and won't allow another existence comparable to itself to appear, so it won't allow the 8 great domains to exist in this world. Therefore, I erased all traces of the 8 domains on the platform." Sure enough, it was impossible for there to be no remnants of the 8 domains. It was just that someone had purposely taken them away. However, Su Yu was thinking about the 9th master. Who would have thought that it would be the ninth hegemon's fusion domain? As he spoke, the ninth hegemon looked at Su Yu and said meaningfully, "The power of the fusion domain is extraordinary. If you encounter it, you will most likely die. I advise you to be careful." Su Yu and the ancient god Jiulong were rare existences in this world who had mastered the 8 great domains. The fusion domain didn't want a second Su Yu to appear. If he found out about the existence of Su Yu and the ancient god Jiulong, he would try his best to get rid of Su Yu. "How powerful is it?" Su Yu asked. The power of the 8 great domains combined was barely satisfactory. So what if the 9 great domains combined couldn't be that powerful? "It's probably about the same as the ancient god Jiulong in the abyss." Unexpectedly, the ninth hegemon said something that was extremely shocking. "Are you sure you aren't lying?" Su Yu squinted his eyes. The ninth hegemon smiled bitterly. "Of course not. The fusion domain not only has the 9 great domains, but it also absorbed the remnant marks left by the Taichu Taoist master in the martial arts sacred land." The people were in an uproar. Many peerless almighties were even more shocked. "The martial arts sacred land has the remnant marks of the Taichu Taoist master?" The ninth hegemon nodded. "Of course. When the Taichu Taoist master first met the heroes of the world, he demonstrated his martial path in the martial arts sacred land, leaving behind a remnant mark that was passed down to future generations. Later on, many powerful beings have received invitations to go and observe that remnant mark," said Yi Zichen. "It is said that that remnant mark is the ancestor of all techniques. All the divine techniques of the various clans were derived from that remnant mark." Hiss! Everyone gasped in shock. Even Su Yu couldn't help but gasp. The ancestor of all techniques. All the ancestors' domains, divine techniques, and even the 9 great domains came from the remnant mark left by the Taichu Taoist master? You can imagine how powerful it is. The ninth hegemon said. Now, the fusion domain has that remnant mark, and its power is almost the same as that of the ancient god Jiulong. That's because he hasn't completely mastered the remnant mark. Once he does. He didn't continue because Zhongren could already imagine it. How powerful would the fusion domain be if it carried the ancestor of all techniques? Su Yu couldn't help but touch the returning ruin's divine steel in his arms. In a sense, the remnant mark on the returning ruin's divine steel should be able to compete with the ancestor of all techniques. After all, it was a collection of all the peak secret techniques from countless eras. Can you tell me what the 9th realm is? Why did it develop its own intelligence after the fusion? Su Yu asked. The fusion of the 8 great domains didn't happen in such a strange way. After a long silence, the 9th hegemon said slowly, "Nothing." "Nothing?" The peerless almighties frowned. "I asked you what kind of domain it was. Why did you say nothing?" However, Su Yu waved his hand and interrupted him. "The 9th realm is nothing." The 9th hegemon sighed. "That's right, it is nothing. Nothing means blankness. Everything is possible. It can transform into any domain you want." The 9th hegemon revealed a shocking secret. The heaven-splitting ancestor was stunned. "So, it won't be a problem to transform into the other 8 great domains?" The 9th hegemon nodded. "Yes. In a sense, I can replace all of the 8 great masters." Hiss! Everyone gasped again. Compared to the other 8 great domains, the 9th realm, nothing, was like cheating. However, it's precisely because of nothing that it has infinite possibilities. After fusing with the other 8 great domains, it developed intelligence and betrayed me. The old man was extremely lonely. It was because of this that he was trapped on the island. He didn't eat, drink, or replenish his power. Chapter 2872. That was why he was in such dire straits. If Su Yu and the others had not come, he would have been trapped on the island. Fortunately, you ran away quickly. Otherwise, you would have ended up like the other 8 masters, Yun Yazi said slowly. Everyone finally understood. The other 8 masters had all had their fortunes plundered by the ancient god Jiulong. As a result, their domain power was halved. But the 9th master was different. When he saw that the situation was not good, he escaped first. What he obtained was the most complete domain. It was conceivable. Wu was far more powerful than the other 8 domains. After merging with the other 8 domains, it was entirely possible for it to develop intelligence. What Suyu cared about the most was whether he could find it. He wanted to obtain Wu and forge the real divine 9-dragon cauldron with the 9 domains. He wanted to forge a true doctrine artifact that belonged to him. Do you still have a connection with it? Yes. The 9th master was very sure. He knew Suyu's intentions. Protect me, and I will find Wu for you. Right now, he had nothing. It was good enough to be alive. He did not dare to ask for more. All right. Follow me to the 9-star civilization. Suyu looked at the other side of the island. At the end of the dark abyss road was a swirling 9-colored vortex. Entering the vortex meant entering the 9-star civilization. That was the last civilization of the great beginning realm. It was the place where the grudge between Suyu and the Emperor would finally be resolved. The group of people put down the leaf boat. The abyss water was a terrible thing. Even a peerless almighty could be turned into ashes if they touched it. But the leaf was safe and sound. Everyone was finally relieved and jumped onto the boat. Suyu boarded a leaf boat with the help of the sinful girl. Countless living beings steered the small boats and sailed toward the 9-colored vortex. They were heading toward the legendary final destination of the great beginning realm, the 9-star civilization. Suyu sat on the leaf. He sighed. 200 years had passed, and he had finally reached the final step. He could not help but look back at the great beginning palace. But at a glance, he was surprised to find a chessboard was carved on the back of the great beginning palace. It was filled with stars. The black and white chess pieces displayed an incomparably vast pattern. A chessboard? Suyu recognized it immediately. That was the youth whom they had met twice, currently playing chess. Why was it carved in the hall of the Taichu Daolord? What was the relationship between the young man and the Taichu Taoist master? In the midst of bewilderment, the Taichu temple was getting further and further away. It's also getting more and more blurry. It was far away because the leaf boat was moving away from the Taichu temple. It was fuzzy because Suyu's consciousness could not bear it any longer and was about to sink into oblivion. He gritted his teeth and persevered until now. Finally, he could no longer endure it. His eyelids kept drooping. The sinful lady sensed Suyu's unusual state, so she kept calling out to him. However, Suyu had really tried his best. He used the last of his strength and said, "I tried my best." He was too tired. He had never been so tired in his life. His consciousness quickly sank into darkness. The sinful girl's shouts seemed to be isolated from him. In the darkness, Suyu heard a bone-chilling knocking sound. That would be a nightmare for Suyu. His surroundings gradually became clearer. He had once again returned to the sealed secret room. Not far away, a stone statue with its back facing him was relentlessly knocking on the stone wall, trying to knock it open. Suddenly, the statue stopped. She stood where she was, motionless. Suyu held his breath, but his heart could not help but beat wildly. Even with his temperament, he could not help but lie to himself that the statue could not see him. Roar! Suddenly, a ferocious female face appeared in front of Suyu. Her face was full of cracks, looking sinister and terrifying. With a mouth full of sharp teeth, she suddenly pounced on him. Suyu shuddered in fear. Before he could dodge, his neck was grabbed by a pair of powerful hands. Moreover, the grip was getting tighter and tighter. "Give me back my heart! Give me back my heart!" The stone statue screamed crazily, its face becoming more and more ferocious. Its hands were getting tighter and tighter. Suyu could barely breathe. He tried his best to pry open the stone statue's hands, but this place seemed to be the real world controlled by the stone statue. He could not use the power of the heavenly law master at all. He was like a mortal being pinched by the statue, unable to resist. In his ears, he heard the shrill shouts again and again, "Give me back my heart!" After roaring innumerable times, the stone statue suddenly lowered its head and stared at Su Yu's heart. Its eyes were filled with shock. Then it pulled out a stone hand. The palm turned into a ghostly claw at a speed visible to the naked eye. Titter! Its sharp fingers pierced into Su Yu's chest, grabbing the heart of Prince Mirrorflower. "My heart! My heart!" Crash! With a pull of its palm, it dug out the bloody heart. Its face was filled with deep ecstasy. Su Yu felt his body rapidly losing its life force, and it began to solidify into stone. On the other hand, the stone statue of Prince Mirrorflower, after obtaining the heart, its stone body began to recover its flesh and blood. Su Yu saw this and remembered what Qin Yun had said. If Prince Mirrorflower were to be resurrected one day, it would be from the heart. Now, in the darkness, he was his own soul, and the stone statue of Prince Mirrorflower in front of him was her soul. His soul petrified was equivalent to death, and the petrified dead soul of Prince Mirrorflower began to resurrect. If everything went according to plan, when he was completely petrified and the stone statue of Prince Mirrorflower turned into flesh and blood, she would be able to control Su Yu's body. Su Yu wanted to stop it, but there was no way to resist here. He could only watch as he slowly petrified, and Prince Mirrorflower gradually recovered into a beautiful woman of flesh and blood. She let go of Su Yu and laughed up to the sky. "I am finally resurrected! Finally resurrected!" Prince Mirrorflower laughed up to the sky. "I really want to thank you for hiding my heart in your body." If her heart was still that stone, without entering the body of a living creature, how could she occupy the body and resurrect? Although the demon emperor had saved Su Yu, he had inadvertently buried a great hidden danger that he did not know about, the release of Prince Mirrorflower. "I will occupy your body now, find the other fragments, and completely resurrect." Prince Mirrorflower laughed. His body slowly dissipated into the darkness. Prince Mirrorflower's soul had already gone to control the body. Su Yu could only look at his petrified body. Now, only a pair of eyes were left, still struggling to resist the petrification. The rest of his body had become a stone man. In the outside world, the sinful girl hugged Su Yu, crying sadly. But suddenly, she seemed to sense something and immediately let go of Su Yu's body and retreated far away. Who are you?" Her eyes were surging with fear. Chapter 2873. The corners of his mouth curled up into a sinister smile. "Why doesn't the vessel know how to greet me when it sees me?" The sinful lady trembled violently. However, it was not because of fear but because of grief and indignation. "Where is Su Yu? What did you do to him?" Jinghua Tianzi smiled. "Su Yu has disappeared from this world for eternity." He smiled. Su Yu's body was engulfed in a layer of flames, which burned his male body into ashes. Amidst the raging flames, a brand new woman's body reappeared. It was the exact same body as the sinful girl, Xia Jingyu and Qin Yun. It was just that she was more graceful and beautiful. She was dressed in a luxurious dress and exuded a dignified aura. She was like the supreme goddess of Brahma, causing others to prostrate themselves in reverence. Looking at her long-lost body, Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince smiled. "I'm finally back! But just a little bit more." Her current body was only formed from a portion of her heart. She still lacked 3 other parts of her body. Coincidentally, 2 of them were right in front of him. One of them was in Su Yu's space storage device. The things that had once belonged to the sinful lady were taken out by Prince Xiaoyao's clone. Later on, when Prince Xiaoyao's clone was killed by Su Yu, all of those things naturally fell into Su Yu's hands. The other piece was in Qin Yun's body. She only needed to move her hands and she would be able to get it. "Take it slow. There's no rush." Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince was excited. He prepared to take out one of the spatial storage devices. Then, he took out Qin Yun's. This place was above the abyss. How could Qin Yun escape? Open. Jinghua Tianzi wiped Su Yu's space storage device's seal with her finger. Then, he opened it. With a sweep of his gaze, he immediately discovered the rock that was his body. He was about to take it out. Suddenly, Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince's eyes focused on an ancient bronze plate. She calmed herself down, thinking that she was seeing things. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that he wasn't mistaken. That's... She screamed and retracted her soul in fear. She saw something she absolutely did not want to see. The sinkhole of the sinkhole. In fact, he didn't even want his own body and just wanted his soul back. He decisively threw the entire spatial storage device into the abyss. He wanted to use the abyssal water to destroy the spatial storage device along with everything inside. However, he threw it halfway. The spatial storage device hovered in the air and froze. At the same time, a dazzling bronze light was released from the storage device. When the light shone on the sinful girl, she did not feel anything. However, when the light shone on Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince's body, thick green smoke came out of her body. Mirrorflower Heavenly Prince screamed in horror, "Ah, no. I don't want to go back." Under the illumination of the bronze light, his soul quickly disappeared from his body. Then, he was forced back into the dark secret room. No. Mirrorflower Heaven's soul was unwilling to give up and tried to regain control of her body. However, the bronze light slammed down and suppressed Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's soul in the secret chamber. Under the effect of that power, his soul began to petrify once again. On the contrary, Su Yu's petrified body started to recover. No. Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower struggled desperately. However, it was useless. She watched helplessly as she turned back into a stone man. As for Su Yu, his flesh and blood had recovered. Su Yu shook his head, not understanding what was going on in front of him. However, Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower was suppressed. How could he let go of this opportunity? He immediately snatched back the heart from Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's hand and inserted it into his body. He looked up at the bronze light. Su Yu found that at the end of the light, there was a dazzling brightness. It seemed that by following the light, his consciousness could leave the dark secret chamber and return to the outside world. Immediately, he clumsily followed the bronze light and slowly crawled out. In the outside world, the sinful girl was still in shock. She stared blankly at Su Yu's space storage device, which slowly fell on the chest of Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's body. It constantly released the bronze light, suppressing Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's soul. She did not dare to act rashly and could only temporarily protect it. At this time, countless leaves finally arrived at the nine-colored vortex and entered it one after another. The sinful girl held her breath, tightly hugged Heavenly Prince Mirrorflower's body, and passed through the nine-colored world. After a burst of heat, it seemed that there was a hot current passing through the surface of her body. When everything calmed down, she opened her eyes. What came into view was a beautiful scene that she had not seen for a long time. The sky was blue and white clouds were leisurely. One after another, huge shattered stars hung in the sky. The spiritual energy of the 8-star civilization was 100 times more than that of the 8-star civilization. The precious demonic beasts and spiritual herbs of the 8-star civilization were everywhere like weed. Is this the 9-star civilization? Someone couldn't help but cry. This was the 9-star civilization that they had dreamed of. It was so beautiful. Everything was the most beautiful thing in their dreams. The demon emperor couldn't help but be excited. Suddenly, he looked at the ground and found a pitch-black ancient tree. He said in surprise, 10,000 demon divine wood. This is something that has been extinct in the 8-star civilization. How can it grow here? The heaven-splitting ancestor followed his gaze and frowned. Demon Emperor, are you crazy with joy? That is obviously a fairy wood. The demon emperor pointed his finger and said angrily, "You are crazy. I am talking about this one." The heaven-splitting ancestor was surprised. "I am talking about this one." The demon emperor was stunned and said, "Heaven-splitting, now is not the time to joke." The heaven-splitting ancestor said hurriedly, "Am I kidding? I am looking at an ancient fairy wood. It is definitely not the 10,000 demon divine wood." They were all old monsters who had lived for countless years. They wouldn't make such a low-level mistake like recognizing something wrong. Gradually, they weren't the only ones who were confused. All of them. It was the same thing, but different people saw different things. Is this a situation unique to the 9-star civilization? The heaven-splitting ancestor was confused. The 8-star civilization had never had any records of the 9-star civilization. They didn't understand it at all. Even the books that Yunyazi knew didn't have any records of it. However, he was certain. This is definitely not normal. We might not have come from the 9-star civilization. Not. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. They had gone through so many hardships, but they weren't from the 9-star civilization? At this moment, a faint mocking voice floated down from the 9 heavens. "I can tell you responsibly that you are from the 9-star civilization." Rumble, a golden light spread. Everyone's pupils constricted. A scene that made them feel despair appeared. 500 sacred mountains formed a line and slowly descended. They surrounded all of them, sacred mountains. The heaven-splitting ancestor felt his throat go dry. Chapter 2874. Why would the sacred mountain appear here? Moreover, they were already prepared to intercept them? Could it be that everything was a conspiracy? Within the sacred mountain, a golden light flashed, and a stone statue walked out. With a crown on his head, he looked down at the beings of nothingness and said, "You must be very surprised that everyone sees a different 9-star civilization, right? I can answer you." The demon emperor and the others were very cautious. They did not believe that the sacred mountain would explain to them out of goodwill. However, they could not hold back their curiosity. "Because you don't understand the 9-star civilization at all." The stone statue sighed. "Don't understand? How could they not understand? The 9-star civilization was the only place that did not need to be repeatedly destroyed by the sacred mountain. It was prosperous, and nurtured countless powerful races. It was the holy land that the beings of nothingness dreamed of. All beings of any era desired to enter the 9-star civilization. They were no exception. As if reading their minds, the stone statue said hoarsely, "The 9-star civilization is no longer the 9-star civilization you imagined. Open your eyes and see everything clearly." At the same time, the sacred mountain released a blinding golden light. In the end, under the illumination, what was reflected in their eyes was actually a gloomy, dilapidated, dark, and decaying land. The blue sky, the white clouds, the beautiful stars, the peerless spirit herbs, all disappeared. The different worlds that everyone had seen had all dispersed. Their eyes finally saw the same scene. An oppressive and destroyed existence. This is the 9-star civilization? Even Yunyazi could not believe it. This was the beautiful 9-star civilization in their heart. Yes, the stone statue confirmed. Yunyazi could not accept it and said, "Then what about the different worlds we saw just now?" He was suspicious. The stone statue said hoarsely, "What you saw was a scene from a different era here. Therefore, different people saw different scenes." This, the beings of nothingness could not understand. The stone statue said slowly, "Simply put, the space-time is distorted, and the past eras are superimposed." Space-time distorted? The span of space-time was too terrifying. Why is this happening? They could not understand. The stone statue said, "Because the absolute beginning realm is about to collapse, and the space-time order is affected. That is why the situation of the past eras appeared today." What? The stone statue's words shocked everyone. The great beginning realm was going to be destroyed? They could believe the destruction of an 8-star civilization, but if the great beginning realm was destroyed, they couldn't believe it. Impossible. The absolute beginning realm has existed since ancient times. Why would it collapse? Yunyazi asked. The stone statue chuckled and shook its head. There are too many secrets that none of you understand. There's no point in talking about it. The demon emperor's eyes flickered as he stared at him. Then who are you? No matter how one looked at it, the old man did not seem like an ordinary person. Me. The stone statue smiled. Let me introduce myself. I'm the clone of the first heavenly son. What? Heavenly son, or a clone of the first heavenly son? Among the sacred mountain heavenly sons, there were also differences in strength. For example, the one ranked last was the 9-tailed emperor. As for the first son of heaven, he was the most mysterious and terrifying of all the sons of heaven. It was said that he had never fought before. Even when the human ancestor attacked the sacred mountain back then, he did not make a move. The only record was that there had been internal strife between the heavenly sons. They fought each other. The last one was the first son of heaven. He single-handedly suppressed the other 9 emperors and prevented the emperors from killing each other. The depth of his strength was unfathomable. The stone elder in front of him was actually the first heavenly disciple's clone? Everyone had despair on their faces. His strength was probably not inferior to an heavenly son. How could they resist such an existence? If I wanted to destroy you, I would have done so long ago. Why would I wait until now? Qiongqi laughed hoarsely. Yunyazi and the others were puzzled. Why did you kill us when we were at the 8-star civilization, but stop when we are at the 9-star civilization? Qiongqi said meaningfully, You will understand very soon. All of you, follow me. The demon emperor and the others were hesitant. How could they be willing to follow the sacred mountain that was their mortal enemy not long ago? Moreover, they did not believe that Qiongqi had any good intentions. After all, the battle between them had really happened. They had destroyed many sacred mountains and killed countless descendants of the heavenly sons. How could the hatred between them be resolved? There would definitely be danger on this trip. However, with Qiongqi in front of them, they had no choice. Yunyazi's eyes flashed. He took out a small golden bookshelf. That was Yunyazi's Tao artifact. He had never used it publicly. Its function was to turn a person into a book. It could turn a person into a book, hide in the bookshelf, and disappear from the world. With Qiongqi's power, no concealment method could be hidden. Only this Tao artifact could be tried. He secretly activated the Tao artifact. 2 beams of golden light shot out from the bookshelf, enveloping Su Yu and the sinful girl at the same time. With a crash, the 2 of them turned into 2 books and fell to the ground. Then, he silently followed the others and left. Before leaving, he said to the black book that the sinful girl had turned into, Take care of Su Yu. Qiongqi sensed something and turned to look at Yunyazi. However, he did not find anything special and left. 2 books, one black and one white, were left where they were. Yunyazi and the others followed the sacred mountain and stepped into the gloomy sky. Soon, they left the sky and entered the depths of darkness. Looking down, Yunyazi and the others were shocked to realize something. There was more than one civilization that they belonged to. Here, there were countless gloomy and dead civilizations, densely packed in the great beginning realm. How many 9-star civilizations are there in the world? Yunyazi asked. Qiongqi did not even turn his head. There are as many 9-star civilizations as there are eras, but there is only one that is still prosperous. Yunyazi and the others were greatly shocked. They could not come back to their senses for a long time. It turned out that there was more than one 9-star civilization that they dreamed of. There were countless of them. However, the rest had all become dead lands. Soon after, in the sky above the 9-star civilization that the sacred mountain had left, a group of people dressed in strange clothes appeared. They came to the place where the sacred mountain had descended and searched everywhere. The people of the sacred mountain have come to this abandoned 9-star civilization. There must be a huge conspiracy, a mysterious man in an animal skin coat said in a low voice. Check the surroundings carefully, we will definitely find something. However, no matter how they searched, they did not find anything special. They only picked up 2 books, one black and one white. Leader, there are 2 books. The mysterious man in animal skin frowned. Only 2 books? He opened it and frowned. Biography of Su Yu, biography of the sinful girl? If it was some kind of martial arts technique, it might be of some value. What was the point of 2 personal biographies? He was about to throw it away when the person beside him said, Leader, doesn't Miss Wencheng like to read? Isn't it good to give it to her? After thinking about it, the mysterious man in animal skin smiled. That's true. Thus, he put the 2 books away. Chapter 2875. At the end of the dark absolute beginning realm. Among the countless abandoned 9-star civilizations, there was a bright and glorious civilization. Like a bright lamp in the dark night, it illuminated the world. It was a civilization shaped like a mountain. Its surface area was so large that it was the gathering place of 100 9-star civilizations. Moreover, it was a huge number of over 10,000 8-star civilizations. Rays of light radiated outwards. It showed that it was extremely prosperous. It was the only surviving 9-star civilization in the current era. It was a place where the experts of tens of thousands of races gathered. It was also the 9-star civilization in the hearts of Yun Yazi and the others. In a certain blessed land, immortal clouds curled up, and beautiful flowers bloomed. Countless beautiful women walked back and forth. Among them, even the maids were beauties that were rarely seen in the outside world. As for those who were in high positions, they were even more so, stunningly beautiful. In a secret room, there was a woman as beautiful as a fairy in a painting who was in a deep meditative state. Suddenly, her left little finger trembled slightly. She was startled awake. Brother Su Yu has come to the 9-star civilization? In her eyes, scenes of the past flowed backward. Su Yu and the others passed through the vortex and entered the 9-star civilization. She was naturally Xia Jingyu. After so many years, the current Xia Jingyu was even more ethereal and beautiful. It was like a pearl blooming with a unique luster. She stood up excitedly and paced back and forth in the secret chamber, unable to express the joy in her heart. How is Brother Su Yu now? Does he remember me? Was he still with Qin Xiener? Or is there someone else around? She kept muttering, her imagination running wild. As the saying goes, one feels shy when one is near home. It was the same for people close to him. After a long time, she finally calmed her restless heart and said, Regardless of whether you remember me or not, my heart remains the same. Even if time and space changed and time shifted, her heart still lingered on the past. Under the pear blossom tree was a beautiful memory that she would never forget. Where is she now? Xia Jingyu murmured. He couldn't wait to see Su Yu again. However, she resisted the urge to divine Su Yu's future. She had used it once before, but it had been used by her own clansmen, who had almost killed Su Yu. He could not let them know that Su Yu had come to a 9-star civilization. Otherwise, they would try their best to kill him. Dong dong. Someone knocked on the door. Xia Jingyu immediately reined in her emotions, a trace of helplessness on her face. Look. His every move was under the control of some of his clansmen. Even his sudden awakening from meditation was clearly seen by them. She regained her composure and opened the stone door. A middle-aged woman with peerless charm stood outside the door. Jingyu, did something happen to you? She asked meaningfully. For a person to suddenly awaken from a deep meditative state, there was bound to be a major event that disturbed his state of mind. It's just some problems with my training, Xia Jingyu replied calmly, not revealing any flaws. I'm sorry to have caused you to worry. So, this person was the leader of the goddess tribe. That's good. She nodded slowly. Since you're awake, you should go out for a walk. There's a banquet at the border, and I've gotten an invitation for you. Xia Jingyu refused without hesitation. Clan leader, I just want to cultivate now and quickly make up for my cultivation. Back then, when the sinful lady was hunting Su Yu down, Xia Jingyu had sacrificed something of hers, causing her breakthrough to Daolord to be delayed. The progress of his cultivation had been greatly affected. The clan leader spoke with an amiable expression. Balancing work and rest is the right way to go. Purposely cultivating will only make you worse. Listen to me and participate. Seeing that Xia Jingyu had no intention of agreeing, the clan leader's expression became serious. Must I use my status as the clan leader to pressure you? Xia Jingyu sighed helplessly. This junior understands. She was very reluctant to participate in these so-called banquets. These were usually social gatherings held by the young prodigies of powerful races. The clan leader hoped that she would go to these gatherings more often to attract some outstanding youths. This way, she would be able to find the most suitable husband for her. She rarely participated in such banquets. The clan leader probably felt impatient and began to use his authority to force her to participate. At the same time, in a certain abandoned civilization, unlike other civilizations that had fallen into complete darkness, most of this civilization was gloomy, but a small part of it was bright and resplendent. There was a gathering place of different races. They were a race that could not survive in the intense competition of the 9-star civilizations, so they migrated to the abandoned 9-star civilizations. In the abandoned 9-star civilizations, they found a place that they could barely survive in. Then they established their territory. There were many similar races. This was just one of them. They were called wanderers by the 9-star civilizations. In other words, they were people who wandered at the edge of the world. In a civilization, in a certain dilapidated city in a remote corner, the group that had gone out to hunt had returned to the mansion in the city. In the backyard of the mansion, a young girl with a delicate face was holding an old book, reading it with great interest. Her eyesight was very poor, and she could only see the words clearly when she got very close. Miss Marquis Wolf officer is here. Master is receiving him in the side hall. A maid whispered in her ear. Wen Cheng put down the book and immediately frowned. Why are you mentioning him to me? What a bummer. The maid said helplessly, Master wants Miss to go over. I'm not going. I want to read. Wen Cheng seemed to loathe the middle-aged man and turned to return to her room. The maid could only go back to report. At the moment, Marquis Wolf officer was in the side hall, chatting happily with Wen Cheng's father. We went out to hunt this time, and found a large amount of resources in many abandoned civilizations. A conservative estimate is that it can be used by Wenyuan City for 10 years. Marquis Wolf officer said seriously. Only 10 years? Wen Cheng's father was the city lord of Wenyuan City. He silently sighed in his heart, feeling very worried. The abandoned civilization they were in did not have spirit energy, and could not produce any resources. The reason it could be maintained now was because the various factions of the civilization were constantly searching for resources from the abandoned civilizations to supply the small civilizations they created. Marquis Wolf officer was a capable general of Wenyuan City. His strength was second only to the city lord, and he was extremely skilled in searching for resources. However, the resources of the abandoned civilizations were limited. After many years of searching, all the resources that could be found nearby had long been found. This time, Marquis Wolf officer had gone out for 5 years, and had only found 10 years' worth of resources. This meant that he had to immediately go out and search to maintain the prosperity of Wenyuan City. The situation is extremely unfavorable. Marquis Wolf officer sighed heavily. The situation of the other cities is similar, or even worse. City Lord Wenyuan nodded. How could he not know this? The other cities had already sent people to even further abandoned civilizations to search for resources. Marquis Wolf Officer requested, "I want to leave in 2 months and go to an even more distant abandoned civilization." City Lord Wenyuan relaxed inwardly. He was still thinking about how to speak. Chapter 2876. Marriage? City Lord Wenyuan's heart thumped. A look of deep hesitation flashed across his face. Marquis Wolf Officer was his most capable general. Many cities wanted to poach it away. In order to win him over, City Lord Wenyuan naturally did everything he could. But among these abandoned cities, Wenyuan City was one of the weaker ones. What he could afford, other cities could offer double or even 10 times more. The reason why Marquis Wolf Officer hadn't been poached away was because of the Wolf Officer. It was because he had taken a fancy to Wenyuan City Lord's daughter. Because of her, he was willing to stay. Of course, he didn't stay for nothing. Instead, he asked to be engaged to his daughter. In truth, City Lord Wenyuan was extremely unwilling. Marquis Wolf Officer was about the same age as him, so he could definitely be Wencheng's father. How could City Lord Wenyuan be willing to marry his daughter? Unfortunately, Profound Literature City needed Marquis Wolf Officer. Thus, City Lord Wenyuan agreed against his will. All these years, Marquis Wolf Officer had been urging her to get married. However, he had always been thinking of ways to evade it, hoping that this day would come later. "It is still too early to talk about marriage," City Lord Wenyuan said. "Let Wenqing grow up a bit more." Marquis Wolf Officer frowned, took out a secret letter, and placed it on the table. "This is..." City Lord Wenyuan said thoughtfully. Marquis Wolf Officer said indifferently, "City Lord will know once you take a look." City Lord Wenyuan had a bad premonition. His master tore apart Xinjian. After reading the contents of the letter, Zhang Xian was infuriated. The letter was a recruitment letter that the first city's governor had handed to Marquis Wolf Officer. The recruitment condition was to betroth his daughter to the Marquis of Wolf County. As long as Marquis Langguan was willing to join them, he could immediately marry his daughter. Marquis Langguan raised his teacup and said indifferently, "Although I am deeply in love with Miss Wenqing, there is a limit to a person's patience. If the city lord has no intention of marrying Miss Wenqing to me, then I have no reason to reject his good intentions." Hearing this, City Lord Wenyuan's heart tightened. After some thought, he said, "I would like to ask Wenqing's opinion on this matter. How about it?" He had no other choice. He could only agree. But before he agreed, he had to first ask for Wenqing's opinion. "Then hurry up. I must marry Wenqing within a month, otherwise." Marquis Wolf Officer didn't continue. But the meaning was clear. He could no longer risk his life for a woman with no future in sight and for Profound Literature City. "I understand." City Lord Wenyuan stood up and went to find Wenqing to have a heart-to-heart talk. "Wait." Marquis Wolf Officer suddenly remembered and took out 2 books, one black and one white, from his bosom. "This time I found 2 books, give them to Wenqing." City Lord Wenyuan nodded. Wenqing liked to read books the most. But what the broken civilization lacked the most was books. Wenqing should like these 2 books. He arrived at the backyard. City Lord Wenyuan knocked on the door. "Wenqing, open the door." "It's me. Father wants to talk to you." "Don't talk about it, don't talk about it." Wenqing's coquettish voice came from inside. "Father doesn't love me anyway." City Lord Wenyuan felt guilty. He felt a stabbing pain in his heart. If there was a choice, who would be willing to give their daughter to an old man to defile? But he had no other choice. Hearing this, he silently put down the 2 books. With his hands clasped behind his back, he left in loneliness. After a long time of silence, Wenqing opened the door. Seeing the lonely back view of her father walking with his head lowered, she could not help but bite her lips, her eyes filled with self-blame. "I knew that father had to work very hard to maintain the city, so why did I have to be unreasonable?" She suddenly saw the 2 books on the ground. She could not help but pick them up. Biography of Su Yu, Biography of the Sinful Girl? Her attention was once again attracted by these two books. Su Yu, Sinful Girl? Who is it? I've never even heard of it, yet you have the cheek to write a biography? When Cheng wrinkled her cute nose, she casually threw the two books away. But before she threw them away, she could not bear to. Sigh, I haven't seen a new book in a long time. Forget it, I'm just reading to pass the time, When Cheng muttered to herself. She brought the two books back into the house and placed them on the study table. The white one, the black one, which one should I read first? When Cheng raised her eyebrows. Finally, she chose to open the white one. Biography of Su Yu. Let's see what you did in your life to have the cheek to write a biography. When Cheng flipped it open, casually looking through it. But with one look, she could not help but be attracted. Xinyue Island? What is that place? There are mountains, water, and even the sky? It looks very beautiful. How could this Su Yu be so foolish? In order to save his father-in-law, he actually went to the imperial capital alone to participate in some competition? Xia Jingyu is really beautiful and kind, but Qin Xianer is cute and loyal. Who should Su Yu choose? How could this Su Yu be so fickle? He actually flirted between the two of them. Sigh. In the end, he still chose Qin Xianer. Xia Jingyu is so pitiful. Sob sob sob. Xianer actually died. And so many good girls, all dead. As she read on, she could not help but shed tears. She was deeply immersed in the ups and downs of the story. Reading the biography, it was like experiencing Su Yu's happiness, anger, sorrow, and joy. When she stopped crying, she realized that it was already dawn. One look and she realized that it had been an entire night. She forgot to eat and sleep, continuing to read. But when she flipped to the next page, it was gone. Why is it gone? When Cheng opened her eyes wide, angrily slamming the table. Damn it, I was at the most exciting moment, why is it gone? She had been excited, but there was no more. Damn it, who wrote this book? Don't let me know, or I will definitely send you a kitchen knife. When Cheng was furious. Then, she looked at the last black book. With a thought, he said, these two books should be related, right? She immediately flipped open the black book, but to her disappointment, there was no connection between the two. This book described the life of the sinful woman. So boring! This woman called Sinful Woman, does she only know how to cultivate? No love, only a teacher called Yun Yazi, so boring. She closed the book, once again flipping through the white book. She could not help but want to read it again, to review the details that she had missed. Who knew? Just as she was about to open it, the book actually burst into flames. Ah! It's on fire. When Cheng immediately used her body to try and extinguish the flames, it was obvious how much she cherished the book. She actually used her body to suppress the fire. But the flames still mercilessly burned the white book into ashes. When Cheng looked at the ashes on the table, her eyes brimming with tears. My book. My Su Yu's biography. But she continued to cry and cry. The ashes were blown by the wind, actually condensing into a human figure in midair. Then, it transformed into a clear woman. The woman's features were like a painting, her beauty out of this world, as if she had walked out of a painting. As a woman, Wen Cheng could not help but be captivated by her stunning appearance. But then, she suddenly became frightened, her eyes wide. A person ran out from the book?